Well, good Wednesday afternoon and welcome to 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero here with you. The two of us with you for the next 3 hours, in fact. 3 until 6 today. Plenty to get to on the show. K-State hoops, including the Wildcat wrap-up. We've got a little Chiefs off-season primer for you. Some best bets for college basketball. What is wrong with you? So much to get to over the course of the next 3 hours here on the show. Thank you so much for joining us for it. You're welcome to be a part of the show as well if you so choose on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. And you can also hop into the comments section on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the name of our channel and where you can go comment and hang out with us during the course of the show. Don't forget that over on our YouTube, as of last night, immediately following the K-State game, Dan went live on the YouTube, recapping the game, all the highlights, the major contributors, major moments of the game. You can find his post-game wrap-up video right now on our YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. Make sure you are subscribed so you always get first access and easy access to all of our live streams, post-game recaps, daily shows, and so much more. Now, we do have so much more coming up on the show today. We'll lead off talking about that K-State win over Baylor from last night. Also this hour, we've got One Gotta Go and much more. We'll talk some Chiefs receiver core and free agency later on in the show today. Juju's a free agent. McCole Hardman's a free agent. MVS is on a pretty malleable deal. What are the Chiefs going to do about that wide receiver position going forward? So we'll talk about that coming up at the top of the 4 o'clock hour. Tim Fitzgerald is going to join us today for our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs Insider. We'll also get to what the Big 12 tournament, what the NCAA tournament could look like for Big 12 teams. How many are going to get in? I saw today from his name. I got to remember what his full name is, Dan, but he's a bracketologist, not one of the bigger ones. But he runs a website called Bowertology. His last name is Bauer. And he is regarded by the Bracket Project, DJ Bauer, that's his name. He's one of the most accurate bracketologists all over the internet. Of the 150 guys in the Bracket Project, he's one of the most accurate. He's got KU as a 1 seed in the Midwest. K-State he has as a 3 seed and has them going to Denver for their first weekend of games. A little best of both worlds action for coverage week 1 or week 2 of the tournament.
We take that.
Yes.
We're pulling for that.
Yes.
Good on you, DJ Bauer.
Des Moines, Kansas City, and Denver. Those are our highlight cities for NCAA tournament play. And if you're hoping to go to a game, probably for you too, because nothing else is anywhere close to Northeast Kansas.
What, like the next closest to us is like Columbus?
The first weekend, it'd be Columbus, Ohio. And for the second weekend, the Sweet 16 Elite 8, it would be Louisville, which is not an awful drive, but
no.
8.5 hours is 8.5 hours. I've made that drive for the tournament before. It's
my preference would be 1 hour.
Yeah, right. Less than an hour if you drive fast enough. But that's a story for a different day and maybe a different radio program. So we'll talk about some NCAA tournament projections coming up a little bit later on in the program today. How about this? Our guy Mark in the YouTube comments even giving a shout out to the KU and K-State wrap-up vids. Appreciate that, Mark.
Love that, Mark. Thank you.
If you would like to go watch Dan's from last night, mine from Saturday, it would have been the last time KU played at home. Go check those out on our YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. And we'll start with some K-State basketball from last night. Dan was there at Bramlage Coliseum. K-State just wore down the Baylor Bears, and I think it is incredibly impressive, even if Baylor is not right now playing to the peak of its abilities, and we will touch on that in this segment. But to give up a 21-8 run at the end of the first half, to be down double figures, and to then come back and not just win the second half, but dominate in the second half against a really dang good team, even though they haven't played particularly well the last 2 games. That's a really good Baylor team. You put it on your Twitter last night that trio of guards, Cryer, Flagler, George, probably the best trio of guards in the country. They can attack you so many different ways. There's so many different things they excel at. To beat that team by double figures, to come from behind by double figures, to win by that amount, obviously impressive. To do it again for the second straight game in the second half, to be so energized coming out of the break after struggling in that regard for a few games in a row, that was really remarkable, and I think just really impressive overall for K-State. You look at the rest of the schedule, it's really not all that daunting, but this was the big one. This was the one where it felt like, hey, if you can get a win over the best team left on your schedule, no matter what happens in the Big 12 tournament, assuming the rest of the year goes as planned, you're a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament.
I think so.
And I think showing the toughness that K-State showed last night to get that win to come from behind, to show that they can win games, and this has been off and on, I think, over the course of the year, but you can win games in which Marquise Noel just does not shoot the ball well at all. He did a lot of other things well. He did not shoot the ball well at all. Again, to still find ways to win, to get some of those role players, back of the bench guys involved, super impressive, I thought, for K-State.
Yeah, and you mentioned the 21-8 run to close the half. That was a 21-3 run that helped Baylor build their largest lead at 34-26. And the only reason it was 21-8 going into the half is because Naquan Tomlin scored the final 5 points of the first half. You talk about, somebody outside of your big two of Johnson and Noel stepping up. Even though Naquan Tomlin only played 19 minutes last night because of foul trouble, I thought he was excellent on both ends of the floor. And those 5 points were big. He had a corner three, which is a shot he's comfortable with, but he hasn't shot at a high percentage this year. You can tell it's one of those. He probably is cash in practice and just hasn't found the range in games. And so teams don't really take him too seriously as a 3-point threat in the course of games, but he's not afraid to get out there in the corner, and his teammates aren't afraid to set him up in the corner when they see he gets space. And he knocked down that 3, and then they got him a wide open dunk to cut it down to 3. And that's where things stood going into the locker room. And then, the second half was all K-State in a very similar vein to the Iowa State game on Saturday, where K-State went to the locker room down, but in the second half, they made a defensive adjustment. They got harder to score on. And offensively, against Iowa State, they did just enough. Last night, they scored 44 second-half points. And they did that, again, without a barrage from the three-point arc. What really stood out about Kansas State's offense was how much of it was easy, how much of it was right at the basket. They had 42 points in the paint. And we have talked about Baylor not being your typically excellent defensive team that we have seen Baylor be under Scott Drew over the last handful of years. Maybe Jerome Tang had the magic elixir.
I was going to say, what was the same about all those Baylor teams for years that is suddenly not the same now?
Yeah, maybe that's a Tang thing. Who can say? But K-State just got so much easy offense last night. And some of that, I think, was Baylor's scheme. Like they threw some junk defenses at K-State. They threw a 1-3-1 at them early. And Scott Drew even said after the game, we had 4 defenses we wanted to throw at them. None of them really worked. Like early in the game, Kansas State set the tone by getting easy baskets in the half court. And that has been a struggle for them in this stretch from about late January to now, where they haven't scored as prodigiously as they did early in Big 12 play. Easy baskets in the half court have not come as easily to Kansas State. But last night, that's how they set the tone, and they were able to score 42 points in the paint. You do that because the ball's moving crisply. You're taking care of the ball. K-State with just 7 turnovers last night, and Marquise Noel didn't have a single one of those. 10 assists and 0 turnovers. That is as great a game as you can play when you also shoot 2 of 11 from the field and 0 for 6 from behind the arc. And Noel can't find it from the field right now. But if he's going to hand out 10 helpers and not turn the ball over, I'm not all that fussed what he shoots, because that playmaking provides a spark, and it gets guys involved. It gets Keontae Johnson even more engaged and aggressive. He was awesome last night. That was his best game this month for sure.
For sure.
His most points since the KU game, his first 20-point game since the KU game at Allen Fieldhouse at the end of January.
It doesn't seem like that would be the case, but
yeah,
as Big 12 play.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. He was engaged. He seems, and his teammates seem to have found a bit of a second win here. And when we look back at the sequence of games that got us to these last 2 back-to-back wins for Kansas State, some of it just might be, this is what the Big 12 is. You lose your road games, you win at home, because there's only one team in this league 16 games now into the schedule. No, 15 games into the schedule. Got a little ahead of myself. 15 games into the Big 12 schedule. There is only one team in the league with a winning record on the road. Just one. It's Kansas, of course. They're 5-3. But they're the only team in this league that has a winning record away from home. So what this league has been about is take care of your business at home. Find a way to win games, beat the teams that are ranked above you, beat the teams that are above you in the standings. Find a way to do that at home. And Kansas State found a way to do that last night. And the ways they did it, easy offense, big night from their star, super point guard game for Marquise Noel, and a second half rally that showed that, contrary maybe to the worry we had about this team a week ago, there's still some life in those legs. There's still some energy, and there's still some wind in their sails here as they come down the stretch.
Speaking of the stretch, you've got Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, and West Virginia left on the schedule after that win last night. And I said this on yesterday's show as we were getting ready to send it to the K-State Sports Network, that if you went 3-1 the rest of the season, you were probably feeling pretty good about getting a 3 seed. Certainly no worse than the best 4 seed, but a 3 seed probably felt like the reality for K-State at that point. But if you could beat Baylor, if you could get that was 3 wins those next 3 games against the bottom of the league with a loss to Baylor, you're still probably feeling pretty good. But if you can get that win over Baylor, that's a morale thing, that's a momentum thing, and that's a tremendous resume win. That's another quad 1 win. That's sweeping Baylor. That's the only team that K-State has swept up until this point in Big 12 play, with some chances coming up here as well. That was the one that felt like it was going to unlock what the maximum potential seed for K-State was going to be coming up in the NCAA tournament. I think we've gotten proof in recent years that while we often say, yeah, well, maybe 1 or 2 wins in the Big 12 tournament will get a team in or will push them over the top, I think you truly need to be like right in the middle of the bubble anymore for that to really matter. Because we've seen years when, and I'll use KU as an example, KU's gone out and lost early in the Big 12 tournament. I want to say it was 2017 that was, with Frank Mason, Josh Jackson, Devontae, that team that was really freaking good.
The Elite 18, yeah.
Yeah, they lost to TCU in the first round of the Big 12 tournament. It didn't mean anything. Like, they're still the number 1 overall team. That's not a big deal at all. That just happens sometimes. I think if you were Texas Tech maybe, and you're really on the bubble, maybe the Big 12 tournament and winning a game or 2 there will mean a lot. For K-State, frankly, I don't think it will. So to get a win in your best remaining game, most valuable remaining game in terms of metrics and in terms of resume, absolutely huge. And then the next 3, Oklahoma State on the road. Tough place to play. They're going to play hard. You know that.
But they've also lost 3 straight games.
They have not looked good really in any of them. They are sliding at the wrong time.
They seem to really miss Avery Anderson.
Big time. Oh, big. Similar process, I think, to when TCU didn't have Mike Miles. Like, they need someone who can take over, make a play, and get everyone to sort of calm down and get in the right spot.
Settle things down so it's not just Bryce Thompson and John Michael Wright jacking up shots.
Yeah, that's not going to work well for anybody.
Caleb Boone getting 2 fouls as soon as he steps off the bus really hasn't helped them either.
Yeah. Oklahoma, you get them at home. That'll be senior night or senior day next weekend.
No, senior night, 7 o'clock.
It is night? Okay.
That's the Wednesday night game next week.
Okay, Wednesday night next week. They're the worst team in the Big 12. They're not good. They tried hard against Texas Tech last night. I caught most of that game. We've been over it. They seem to have kind of given up on the year. They're not especially talented. They're bad. And then you get West Virginia on the road again. Tough place to play. They're going to play tough. Bob Huggins, obviously hard to play against. Are they one of the 20 best teams in the country, or should they be in the CBI? Like, you pick any game on the schedule and you might get a different version of West Virginia. That is a complete wild card game to me.
And both of those road games, we've talked all season long about this when it comes to the Big 12, is the desperation factor, where every night in this league, you're running into a team that needs to win, that needs a win for their standing, needs a win to get off the bubble or to get onto the bubble, maybe in some cases, or secure their tournament bid, their NCAA tournament bid. You got teams like Oklahoma State. You want to stay out of the 7 seed. You don't want to play Wednesday night in Kansas City.
No.
You don't want any part of that.
No.
In the Big 12 tournament, if you want to, get some wins and improve your chances of making the NCAA tournament. So these are tough spots the next 2 Saturdays for Kansas State. And it would not shock me, and it would not make me necessarily think any less of K-State, depending on how they played, if they got both of those games. Like, it wouldn't really surprise me if they lost in Stillwater and if they lost at West Virginia. Now, I tend to think they'll get at least one of those games. I think they're better than Oklahoma State, especially without Avery what is his last name? I just said his name. Anderson.
Yeah.
Especially without Avery. What did I want to call him? Especially without him, I think K-State's better than them. I think K-State's better than West Virginia, but might they get got by a desperate team in one or both of those games? Yeah, that could happen. But if K-State wins against Oklahoma, they're going to go 10-8 in the league. They're going to finish top half of the league. They're going to avoid that Wednesday pigtail game. And I think they're going to have as compelling an argument as anybody for being a number 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. They're going to have a great argument for being a top 12 seed in the tournament because of the quality wins that they have in the league.
This was obviously huge for K-State to get this win over Baylor. I do want to make one point about the Baylor Bears. I am a lot more worried about them today than I was at this time yesterday. Because look, you're playing at Allen Fieldhouse. KU's obviously really good. They've got a claim for being the number 1 overall team in the tournament, or certainly one of the top 2 seeds overall. Sometimes you get in your own head, you play terribly in a half and you lose a game. Okay, whatever. They've still got Cryer and George and Flagler and sometime, eventually Scott Drew will be in the Hall of Fame. I don't believe he is yet, but he will be at some point in time. They'll be fine. Then they went out and they played the same game. They did the same thing twice in 4 days in the state of Kansas, and they had an absolutely awful second half. And Fraschilla pointed it out on the broadcast and said, yeah, they look tired. They look exhausted. And my wife asked me while we were watching the game, she said, do you think they look like that? Do you think they look tired? And I said, yeah, not necessarily in a they look slow or they look like they're dogging it or something, but they're settling for shots. Like Adam Flagler took a couple of shots in that game. He took a 3 in particular. Must have been 6 feet off the wing on the left wing for 3. I thought, that's not an Adam Flagler shot. Like, he's such a smart and talented player. He doesn't ever shoot the ball like that.
Yeah, he was frustrated and forcing it a little bit. There was a stretch in the second half as K-State started to pull away. I think they ended up going on a 14-2 run to seize control of the game. It was tied at 43. K-State scored 6 straight points. That's when they played Sandstorm. And then they scored 6 more after a free throw. Cam Carter had a big dunk punctuate that. I think that was a 12-1 run. I think it ended up being 14-2. But as that stretch unfolded, you could see Baylor kind of realizing that the game was getting away from them and playing out of character, playing in desperation, forcing some things, forcing some shots. And Flagler, too, in particular, because he just couldn't get going. He was 1 of 13 from the field last night. So,
which is weird for him.
Yes, very, very out of character for him and very much an off night for him. I'm going to disagree that I'm more worried about Baylor out of these last 2 games, just because, again, I think in this league it is so hard to win away from home against a good team. And Kansas State and Kansas are really good basketball teams. So I'm not inclined to knock Baylor for losing both of those games. That was always possible. I understand that Baylor's not a great defensive team. They don't have a guy who's going to give you buckets on the interior. No. Like, they don't have like a post-up offensive threat. I don't think that's a huge deal. They get lots of second chances. Tchamwa Tchatchoua is a difference maker on the offensive glass, and he's only going to get better as he gets more game minutes, and he had double-double off the bench last night.
Yeah.
11 points, 12 boards. So he's going to get better, and he's added the three-point shot-making dimension on that middle ball screen that makes them that much tougher to defend. I tend to think that they are so good on offense that it mitigates whatever difficulties they're having this season on the defensive side. I still feel, even after watching them lose in Lawrence and in Manhattan their last 2 games, I still feel like that's a Final Four team. Not that I'm definitely picking them to go to the Final Four, but I still believe that's their ceiling, and I still believe they can get there.
I agree with that point. My concern more comes from how they have lost the last 2 games as opposed to just lose. Because if they go out and they lose, last night they lose 70-65 and they lose to KU in a fairly normal game, 80-75, something like that. I say, hey, that's 2 tough games. K-State is a top 4 seed in the tournament. KU is probably a 1 seed in the tournament. Like that, them's the breaks sometimes. It's the Big 12. But it's the fact that in second halves in consecutive games, yes, I know it's on the road. Yes, I know they are playing tough quality opponents. But they've gotten railroaded 2 games in a row coming out of the half. That is so unlike that team. And again, I don't know if it's fatigue. I don't know if it's their defensive struggles. They have, and this number is according to Ken Pomeroy. They have the worst defense of any team in the top 30 in the country this year. And the only one close in that mark is Gonzaga. Gonzaga is the same team it always is. They put up a ton of points. They're mega efficient on offense. Defensively, that's just kind of what Gonzaga is. There are only 6 teams with a worse defense in the top 60 in the whole country. You're talking about the likes of Seton Hall and Washington State in the top 60 who have better defenses right now than Baylor does. That's the thing that worries me. And to use a selfism, if shots aren't falling for Baylor, how are they going to win a game? Like, you can see an avenue for our 2 local teams. You can see an avenue where K-State can still win if they aren't making a bunch of shots, because I think the defensive ability is in there. I think their energy, I think their ability to run in transition and get easy shots will help.
They just won a game like that. They just won a game in Fort Worth like that against a top 25 team.
Yeah, and KU, same way. Like, can you win in which Jalen Wilson's not having a great game? Can you win in these myriad ways? The answer is yes. More likely than not, is Baylor going to make shots? Yes. Again, look at those guys they have on the floor and their shot-making ability.
They even shot, even in the loss last night, made 11 threes, shot 39% from deep.
But if you run into a game where you play someone who's playing really well defensively, who's running you off the three-point line, or they just don't go down because that's sort of the nature of the three-point shot, what do you do from there? That's my big worry with Baylor. I agree 100%. Their ceiling is Final Four. Absolutely. They've got the ability. They've got the coaching for it, as much as it pains me to say that. I just worry if they've got multiple ways to win. It's the same thing we were talking about with Purdue yesterday. Like, Purdue, it's pretty easy. You make a couple of three-pointers and you just let Edey cook inside. What happens if you find a team that can at least somewhat match up with Zach Edey? What are you going to do?
What happens if you draw an officiating crew that gives Edey 2 fouls in the first 3 minutes?
Exactly.
Like, what happens if Edey's in foul trouble? Like, significant foul trouble. Like, how do you get bailed out? Like, do you have a plan B, a plan C to win basketball games?
Like, here's an example for you. In Joe Lunardi's most recent bracket, he's got Baylor as the 2 seed in the East. Tennessee is the 3 seed in the East. If everything went with chalk, now granted, that is Rick Barnes, so let's, not get ahead of ourselves. But if we're just talking on paper, if the chalk played out there, you get maybe the best defense in the country in Tennessee, or among the very best defenses in the country against Baylor. I think Baylor can put up points, but Tennessee limits them and their shooting ability. I don't know. I wouldn't love that matchup. Again, Rick Barnes, but you see what I'm getting.
I was about to say, it's Rick Barnes. So if it's a second round game or later, I'm picking against Rick Barnes.
Fair enough. Give me a stand-in for Tennessee. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
That's my only concern with Baylor. But nonetheless, it is a great win for K-State last night. We'd love to get your thoughts on that game. Hit us up on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429, or you can jump into the comment section on YouTube as well. Our channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. We're going to take a break here on the program, our first commercial break of the day. Coming up after this timeout, we'll do a little blind resume edition of One Gotta Go here on 580 Sports Talk. Let's put some one gotta go, shall we, here on 580 Sports Talk. And to address some of the commenters on YouTube, no, my jersey is not the one that's gotta go. Caught a little flack for my Jair Alexander jersey today.
Why Jair Alexander? I'm always fascinated. Obviously, most people who buy Packers jerseys, you go for like the offensive skill guy, or you go Rodgers or Devontae Adams or whomever. What compelled you to make the Jair Alexander jersey purchase?
This was a gift, I believe, but I did ask for it. I'm obsessive. So if you were like, here, I got you this retro Aaron Campman jersey, I'd be like, yes, I will wear it every single day until the numbers fall off. You give me any player, I'll be happy about it. But I always try to get players that are going to be around for a while. I got this right after he signed his new contract. Thought, okay, he's going to be around at least 4 or 5 more years. That's fine. You never want to get the guy who you think's going to be around for forever. Like, I've never gotten a Jordan Love jersey for a very explicit purpose. I'll be his biggest fan if he does become the starting quarterback, but I don't know that he's going to be around forever. So I'm going to wait until he gets another contract before I know, okay, he's locked in. I've got, I think, 7 Packers jerseys. My Aaron Rodgers one, unfortunately, had to be put to rest. It was one of the old Reebok ones.
Okay.
It was old. And it was super nice. It was the stitched on numbers and everything. It was really nice. The numbers tore. Week 1 of the season when they got smashed by the Vikings, which probably should have been
an omen,
somewhat foreshadowing of the rest of the season. So I am probably just going to wait until he gets traded, and then I will buy one on clearance at Fanatics.
There you go.
Get it for cheap.
Good thinking.
Because I do want another one because he's my favorite player of all time. But Rodgers, I got a Randall Cobb one, Devontae Adams. See, all these players aren't there anymore.
Are they all the home green, or
They're all the home green.
Okay.
Yeah. Alexander, got a Donald Driver jersey.
Nice.
Of course, got Jordy Nelson. Yeah, I can wear one every day of the week. Maybe I will someday.
I have not bought like a jersey, a football jersey in a long time. So my Seahawk collection is just 4. I have a Shaun Alexander, the old home blue.
Classic.
I have a Lofa Tatupu, the road white.
Yeah. Madden legend.
So that's the pre-Legion of Boom looking jerseys. And then when they changed jerseys, I bought the Earl Thomas home blue. And then when they won the Super Bowl, I said, whoever wins the MVP, I'm going to get their jersey with the Super Bowl patch. And then Malcolm Smith won the Super Bowl MVP. And I said, I like Malcolm Smith, but I don't like him enough to wear that jersey for the rest of my life. So I got the Russell Wilson road white with the Super Bowl 48 patch. I'm going to do the same Super Bowl 49 and win Super Bowl 49. So I do not have a Super Bowl 49 jersey. And do not currently have an active Seahawk player jersey. Which I don't know. I haven't felt the urge. Like if I buy another one, it'll probably be like I'll go on eBay and find like a Cam Chancellor or Richard Sherman jersey. Like those were the best teams the Seahawks are ever going to have.
Yeah.
Ever.
And, no, I understand that.
I'd rather celebrate those guys than try and convince myself like a Uchenna Nwosu jersey is a good investment.
I know there's a lot of people who say I would never wear a jersey. I'm not wearing another man's name on my back. Like, dog, I don't care.
Like,
Life's way too short. I do not care.
Yeah, I've heard that argument, but on the flip side, it is fun.
Yeah,
it is fun to collect them. I have a bunch of them. They don't get a lot of run these days. Maybe I'll start wearing them since you can all see the on camera now. Maybe I'll start wearing them again.
Yeah, you got to flex the cool
I do.
garb out of the closet.
I do. Now. I need to dig them out of the closet a little bit. But I do have a Tyler Lockett jersey shirt.
That's a good
for
one.
the Seahawks.
That's a good one.
That's my most recent and obviously an active player and obviously a K-Stater. In fact, I bought it at the Rally House in Manhattan.
How about that?
So
football jerseys, I think, are the easiest to wear.
Yes.
Just like on a day-to-day. I almost wore a basketball jersey today. I'm not going to go sleeveless to work. I'm not going to do that. So I threw a T-shirt on under it. Then I thought, no, I'm not feeling myself enough. Like I don't feel like I look attractive enough today to pull this off. So I went with a football jersey instead. By the way, it was going to be my Team Argentina Andres Nocioni jersey.
Oh, I'm really disappointed we missed out on that.
I'll bring it in soon.
Okay.
Maybe during the summer when it gets to be 900 degrees in the studio, I will go sleeveless.
There we go.
We do have some one gotta go to get to today. I will let you go first. I teased that we'll do a little blind resume for the NCAA tournament, so I'll have you go first.
Blind resume. I got 4 teams here. I'm not going to tell you their names yet. If you are an attentive college basketball fan, and Brendan, I know you are, there will be some numbers in here that will probably give away or at least lead you towards being able to determine which teams we are talking about here.
Okay.
But for the sake of letting our listeners play too, no giving the game away until the game has been fully presented. So
Okay.
I've got four teams' resumes here. Team A has 16 wins, 7 of them in their league. They are 42nd in the net ranking, 39th in KenPom. They have 5 quad 1 wins and a non-conference strength of schedule of 154th in the country. That's Team A.
Okay.
Team B has 16 wins, 8 conference wins. They are 48th in the net ranking, 44th in the KenPom. They have 0 quad 1 wins and are 19th in non-conference strength of schedule.
Okay.
That's Team B. Team C
got
has
some concerns about Team B.
Team C has 16 wins, 5 league wins. They are 49th in the net, 50th in the KenPom. They have 5 quad 1 wins and a non-conference strength of schedule that ranks 326th. And Team D. Team D has 16 wins, 5 conference wins. They are 26th in the net, 21st in the KenPom. They have 5 quad 1 wins and a non-conference strength of schedule that ranks 95th. All of these teams are bubble-ish, as you can tell, but I need you to remove one of them. One got to go.
I think and I don't want to put too much emphasis or too much weight on one particular metric. And I know that there's value to all, total wins, league wins, all those things are important. And strength of schedule, yeah, you want to play tougher teams. That should mean something. But 0 quad 1 wins is a major red flag because that is telling me the toughest games on your schedule, whether home or away, you haven't been able to get the job done. Now, I guess without knowing exactly what the record is, how many losses there are, I don't know. Maybe they haven't played any one good period, which is another major concern. I'm going to guess that's not the case.
Considering they have a 19th non-conference strength of schedule?
Yeah, and they're 44th in KenPom, was it?
Yes.
I think I know what team that is, and that's the team I've got to take out.
How would you rank? So you're going to remove Team B. How would you rank A, C, and D?
I think, if I'm remembering correctly, the order, I think I would go DAC, if I'm correctly remembering the stats.
Okay. So, yeah, D would be 26th in the net, 21st in the KenPom, 16 wins, 5 league wins, 5 quad 1 wins, 95th strength of schedule.
Yeah, I would put them first for sure.
Okay. And then you would have A then?
I would put A next, I believe.
You would put A next, and then see A is 16 wins, 7 league wins, 39th in the KenPom, 42nd in the net, 5 quad 1 wins, 154th non-conference strength of schedule.
Yeah.
And C, you would rank last or third in this case.
Yeah.
16 wins, 5 league wins, 49th in the net, 50th in the KenPom, 5 quad 1 wins, 326th in non-conference strength of schedule.
Yo, that's brutal.
You have eliminated Team B with 16 wins, 8 league wins, 48th in the net, 44th in the KenPom. No quad 1 wins in 9 tries, by the way.
9 tries.
And 19th in non-conference strength of schedule. You have eliminated from the NCAA tournament the defending national runners-up, the North Carolina Tar Heels.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Like, how does that team, everyone is back, even for a team that overachieved in the tournament last year? And I know the ACC is down. The ACC is downright bad, is what it is. How do you not have a single quad 1 win? How?
Not one.
How'd you not luck into one?
Brady Manick must have been the best player in the country. And we just
just
didn't know it. I mean, and they replaced him with like great value Brady Manick and Pete Nance, who does some of the things Manick does.
Pete Nance might be poisoned, by the way. I don't know if I've shared this before. He leaves Northwestern.
Mm-hmm.
They're a tournament team. Goes to North Carolina, defending national runners-up with everyone else back. They stink, relatively.
So the other 3 teams are all Big 12 teams. The team you ranked first, 16 wins, 5 league wins, 21st in net, 26th in net, 21st in KenPom, 5 quad 1 wins, 95th non-conference strength of schedule. That is West Virginia. So you have them at the top of your list.
Yeah.
Then you have Oklahoma State, 16 wins, 7 league wins.
I thought that was Oklahoma State.
154th non-conference strength schedule, 5 quad 1 wins. And then the last of those teams was Texas Tech. 16 wins, 5 league wins, 49th in net, 50th KenPom, 5 quad 1 wins, 326th non-conference strength of schedule. They played a game that counted against something called Houston Christian. That game counted on their schedule, not an exhibition game. They played that game for keeps.
Do you know what Houston Christian's former name was?
Was it Houston Baptist?
Yes, it was. Same school. They just changed. I guess, dude, this is not something I'm comfortable covering on a sports talk radio program in Topeka, Kansas, but there have been some issues in one specific denomination of Christianity in recent years.
Sure.
And that church decided, you know what? We really don't want to be tied with this anymore. So they changed their name.
How about that?
They're now Houston Christian. Yeah, I'm not surprised. The Metrics have loved West Virginia all year.
Yes.
Ever since the start of the year, they've loved them.
We'll talk more about those Big 12 teams in particular a little later on in the broadcast. But yes, North Carolina, no quad one wins.
That's absurd. That's just absolutely crazy. All right, I've got an easy one for you. Not a blind resume, but it's easy. Right now, over at bracketmatrix.com, which, by the way, if you're into bracketology and projections and where do all these nerds all over the internet think my favorite team is going, bracketmatrix.com. It is the absolute best. Alabama, Houston, Kansas, Purdue. As of yesterday, those were the top 4 seeds overall, according to the Bracket Project. One's got to go.
Run them through one more time.
Alabama, Houston, Kansas, Purdue.
Assuming that Alabama's going to have their ducks in a row, they've had a tumultuous last 24 hours of the program.
Did you see the clarifying statement from Nate Oates last night?
Yes.
He didn't clarify anything.
No.
This did not help one bit.
No, been a bumpy 24 hours. You're never great when your best player's lawyer has to put out a statement in the middle of a season saying, hey, actually my client knew nothing about the murder one of his teammates was a direct accessory to, and so is not himself a direct accessory to it. Yeah, not a great place for Alabama to be like right now, but assuming this storm for them passes a little bit, which it kind of seemed like it had until 24 hours ago. It still might be them, man, because
really
their floor is lower than those other 3 teams for me.
Interesting.
Like you get them away from Tuscaloosa, and they are not great against like the middling teams on their schedule.
That's true.
Also, they got 30-pieced by the worst team in the Big 12. And like, it'd be one thing if they lost that game like 76-73. Oh, man, it must have been a great night for Oklahoma. A tough one there for Alabama. They got 30-pieced by what's the brothers. I forget, I'm spacing on their names. The Groveses. They got 30-pieced by Tanner Groves.
Dog. I was watching Oklahoma Texas Tech last night. Tanner Groves is not even close to a Big 12 athlete. Like, watching him try to rebound against AMAC and some of those dudes from Tech, he is not a Big 12 athlete. Which really tells you how good his shooting ability is or was, because good Lord, no team should have given him a look in the Big 12.
Yeah, that's he parlayed that one game against Kansas into some very nice offers and opportunities. By the way, we did have a texter from the Big O Tires text line from the 785 reach out and ask what we mean when we say quad one win. And we don't mean to talk. Question. Yeah, great question. We don't mean to talk over your heads. A quad one win is a win over a top 50 ranked opponent at home or a top 75 opponent on the road. Or there's a neutral floor component to it as well, I believe.
I think it's top 50 at home, top 75 neutral, top 100 on the road.
Is it top 100
I believe that's what it is. So this is, when we talk about the net rankings, this is what the NCAA came up with to replace RPI a few years ago, if you remember that ridiculous metric that was totally useless. And they break every team down into quads, and it's based on what the advanced metrics say about you and who you play, when and where you play them, things like that. So for Kansas, we talked yesterday about how they now have 14 quad one wins. That means that 14 of the games they've won have been against teams that also qualify as quad one.
So it's actually, it looks like it's been changed for this year, actually. So the definition, that was the previous definition. The definition's been narrowed a little bit this year. So
probably for the best.
Yeah. So a quadrant one win is a win over a top 30 team in the net ranking at home.
Okay.
A top 75 team in the net ranking on the road, and a top 50 net ranking team on a neutral site.
Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, that's what that means. And when it comes tournament time, when you're talking about resumes, it's more valuable to have a good record or at least multiple quad 1 wins. Whereas if you have a quad 4 loss, for example, Texas Tech's got 2 of those, which means they lost 2 games to really crappy teams. That's bad. The tournament committee will look at that versus other bubble teams and say, well, Texas Tech has more good wins, but they also have worse losses than any of these other teams. So it's just another resume component. And I appreciate the question, by the way, on the text line, because I think this during every broadcast on ESPN. They keep showing, look at the Big 12 in the net rankings and look at all these quad 1 wins. The average viewer has no idea what that is. The average viewer has no clue what quad 2 is. We know because we're obsessive and this is literally our livelihood. We have to know these things. But for the regular viewer, what does this mean? What is this? I don't understand one bit. So I appreciate the question on the Big O Tires text line. We need to get to a quick break. Quick note on some college sports media deals coming up next. And man, every single day it looks like the Big 12 did the right thing. We'll explain what we mean next on 580 Sports Talk. When the Big 12 signed their new media rights deal a few months ago, seemed like it was a pretty good deal for everyone. You stay on Fox, you stay on ESPN, ESPN Plus, whatever. Everyone's going to get a pretty good payout, even the new schools. Worked out pretty well. And they jumped the line. Remember that? That it was the Pac-12 was going to get to exclusive negotiating first, but the Big 12 said, no, we're just going to do ours now. Like, who cares? We're just going to figure it out. More and more, that seems like it was a truly genius move by Brett Yormark. Have you seen who the newest bidder is for the Pac-12's media rights?
Apple TV.
Apple TV. Do you know anyone who is a subscriber to Apple TV?
I am.
Like, are you the only person you know who is one?
So I am only a subscriber because they're a little more my parents subscribe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am able to like connect. They have like a family plan, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm able to connect my account to my dad's Apple ID and use their login to watch such Apple TV favorites as Ted Lasso. And, I actually guess they have a lot of really good shows, it turns out. But yeah, they've only got like 40 million subscribers, which really, it sounds like a lot, but it pales in comparison to like Prime and Netflix and Hulu.
Yeah, it's way, 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 way down on that. So now, of the three biggest bidders to get the Pac-12's football and basketball packages, two of them are stream only. They don't have cable channels or broadcast channels. Amazon, which is accessible and everyone's got it, but that's hard to do. It's hard to sell to someone, hey, you can't just channel flip to our games. You've got to actually actively go and find it. And same with Apple TV. Like, my wife, graduate from Washington State. We will go intentionally find their games. There's no problem with that. We'll do it wherever they are. But now I'll flip on ESPN2 and say, oh, USC and Oregon are playing in basketball. I'll watch the game. I'm not going to go out of my way to channel flip to see if there's an extra game on Apple TV or Amazon that I want to watch. It's just not worth the effort for a game I don't really care about. I would imagine trying to get casual viewers to tune in is an important thing that conferences would want. So to have two of your three options be not having that be possible seems like a problem to me.
Yeah, it more and more is starting to feel like crisis mode for the Pac-12 right now, like existential crisis mode.
Yeah,
for the Pac-12, because they were sold the belief that they could make $50 million a year per school by George Klevikoff. And they are now looking at a scenario where if they get anything remotely close to even what the Big 12 is getting, it's going to be a lot of their inventory on streaming, which is not what anybody wants. Like, streaming is great and all, and it's functional if you know how to use it and have the means and have the ability. There's nothing wrong with streaming games, but if that's where most of your inventory lives, that's a big problem.
Chris Vanini of The Athletic wrote a column this week about the Pac-12's issue, and in the way he put it, the Big 12 getting a deal done with real cable networks and not going all streaming, while that might be the Pac-12's best option, said that not only are the SEC and Big 10 way ahead of the Pac-12, the Big 12 is too. Imagine saying that this time 2 years ago.
Right?
Imagine how quickly things change. We've got to take a break here on 580 Sports Talk. We'll talk the Chiefs wide receiver future this offseason coming up next here on 580 Sports Talk. 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming your way on 580 WIBW and FM 104.9. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you up until 6 o'clock today. Thank you so much for stopping by for part of the show. If you missed the first hour, go over to our website, 580WIBW.com. Just hover over the podcasts tab and then click on 580 Sports Talk. That's where you'll find the hour-by-hour podcast edition of the show, including our breakdown of the big K-State win over Baylor last night, including our round of one gotta go from last hour and much more. Again, that's at our website, 580WIBW.com. Coming up this hour on the show, we'll get to another edition of previewing the Chiefs' offseason, some of their big decisions and most important positions this year. Wide receivers, in particular, in focus today. We'll also get to what is wrong with you. And Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com is going to join us for our Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. Your takes are welcome throughout the show. Either hop into the comment section on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is our channel. That's where you can jump into the comment section. It's a free-for-all. Come join us, watch along, and, of course, you can chime in on the Big O Tires text line as well. That number is 785-272-9429. But let's get to the Kansas City Chiefs and looking ahead to the offseason. Yesterday, spent a lot of time talking about the franchise tag and whether or not it is going to be placed upon Orlando Brown. It sounds like that is the most likely outcome there. You're not going to use it for anyone else. I mean, value-wise, it just doesn't make sense for the Kansas City Chiefs. But offensively, going into this next offseason, going into this next season in general, maybe the second biggest position of concern or of intrigue for the Chiefs is wide receiver. They do not have a ton of talent or depth left at wide receiver after this year going into next year. Juju is a free agent. Mecole Hardman, infamously, is a free agent at this point. MVS, not technically a free agent, but you can cut him after 1 year. You do not have to keep him around. They have a very team-friendly deal with him. Although he played well enough, maybe you do keep him around or you rework the deal. And am I correct? Justin Watson's also a free agent?
Yeah, that was a 1 year deal.
1 year deal for Justin Watson as well, who was useful this year.
Sure he was.
But is that a piece that you could replicate through free agency? I think that is something that you at least have to ask. You obviously have Sky Moore. That is a long-term piece. You drafted him in the second round. You acquire Kadarius Toney. You have him for next year as well. That's it. MVS, again, could go either way with his contract. Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney. Those are your wide receivers for now who are under contract for next year with the Chiefs. So let's just break this down player by player and need by need. Let's start with Juju Smith-Schuster. You were high on him going into the year. I was a little more trepidatious about it. I think probably, and I want to say by the Buffalo game, maybe in the first half of the regular season, it was pretty clear, yeah, Juju's the guy. I mean, he's a legit great fit for this team. He was making plays. Unfortunately, he got banged up at the end of the year, but a very useful piece for this team and more than just a slot receiver. You can line him up in the slot, but he's good on the outside. He's a good blocker, physical receiver. A lot to like about his game. He fits this offense so well because he can do so many different things and he can run a full route tree. You re-signing Juju if you're Brett Veach?
At a certain price.
Okay.
I guess the thing that might make it difficult for the Chiefs in regards to Juju is, I mean, he'll have some demand in the free agent market. Like he took this 1 year deal as a prove it deal, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of had to take a prove it deal from the Steelers and he got hurt. So he's dealt with injuries and he continues to deal with injuries. But I mean, the 78 grabs, 933 yards, the touchdown numbers weren't great, but I think he proved that he's a receiver capable of being what you need him to be. He can get into the underneath areas and make tough catches and keep the chains moving and win on a short release. And he's a good blocker, a willing blocker. And I think he proved quite a bit. The question is going to be, what is his price on the open market? Because of the free agent wide receivers, guys who currently on the market right now as we sit here on February 22nd, Juju Smith-Schuster had the most catches and most receiving yards of any free agent wide receiver. Does that mean he gets something like 10, 12 million a year average annual value from somebody who might be looking to bolster their wide receiver core? because I don't think I'm willing to do that if I'm the Chiefs. I don't think I go there for Juju. I think if there's another team out there willing to give him, 4 for 40 or 3 for 30, something along those lines, I tip my cap and I wish him the best. But if there's a shorter term deal or a lesser annual value you can do where you can make it make sense on the cap, then he is a really good fit. And I think there's a camaraderie there with him and Mahomes and him and his offensive teammates that would be worth exploring bringing him back. But I just wonder if him being more in demand than he might otherwise be, considering this is such a down year for free agent wide receivers, I'm wondering if that might bump his price up to a point where it's not going to make fiscal sense.
I think saying that this is a down year for wide receivers in free agency is an extreme understatement.
Yeah,
it is horrific.
It's a disgusting group of wide receivers, man.
Like, genuinely, seriously, I'm not just saying this because he has played for my favorite team for the last few years. Allen Lazard is a top 4 receiver on the market.
That might be
top 3.
Yeah, he probably top 3. Like Juju, Allen Lazard, Jacoby Myers.
That's horrible. What do you think of 33-year-old Marvin Jones?
Darius Slayton's had some moments.
Yeah.
DJ Chark.
Yeah.
We're just going down the list.
It is gruesome who's out there. And that's the biggest concern, I think, with if this
Matt Collins.
Oh my God. Like, if this was even an average year of free agency, you had a couple guys at the top, maybe a couple really good number 2s, and then it kind of fleshed out to this group, I'd think it would actually be fairly easy to keep Juju back. Not that he should take the quote-unquote hometown discount, especially not for a team he's only been with for 1 year. And it's not like he's from the greater Kansas City area. Like, he's a California dude. He doesn't have ties to Kansas City except for 1 year here. But I would think, given the things you mentioned, the camaraderie, obviously a good relationship with the guys around him, he fit in with the team really well, you would think that would make at least a modicum of sense. He's the best wide receiver available.
Yeah.
He very well could get, even by free agency standards, way overpaid this year because someone out there is going to need a wide receiver. I mean, just off the top of your head, how many teams can you think of that could certainly use a guy of that caliber to make plays who are going to be playoff contending teams? Like, off the top of my head, I think Tennessee just cut a bunch of dudes, including Robert Woods, who never really worked out for them in 1 year. They're going to have a bunch of cap space available. Could they use a wide receiver for whoever their quarterback is going to be, along with Treylon Burks? Absolutely. You know what the Packers really need? A guy who can get yards after catch. Juju, pretty decent at that. I don't think the Packers can afford it, but I would love them to take a look at that. Baltimore, they need receivers.
Dying for receivers.
As bad as anybody. New York, if they need some help. Sterling Shepard's a free agent. I know he hasn't played. Who did you literally just mention?
Darius
Slayton.
Free agent, yeah.
For some reason, I didn't see him on my list here. Like, they could use a wide receiver for sure. Lots of teams that are going to be contending or certainly will be in the playoffs next year could use wide receiver help. And some of those teams with a lot of cap space are probably going to be able to overpay for it. That's the big concern with Juju, because if you're the Chiefs, and I said this yesterday talking about Orlando Brown and the offensive line, you've got enough greatness at the top of the roster. You can be smart with your money and go for good instead of great, so you're not screwing over other pieces of the roster. Like, you might not think Orlando Brown is a great player, but you can pay a fair amount to him for good enough, and the rest of the guys will make it all work. Juju, I don't know if you need to do that because his impact is directly tied to the impact of your quarterback, who can probably make anybody look good. I'm not saying that all you should do is say, yeah, bring back Justin Watson, don't cut MVS, and you're good. I would be quite disappointed in that, in fact, but it is an interesting balancing act here with Juju. He got everything out of this year he needed to get out of this year. He won, made some friends along the way, and he is going to get a buttload of money next year.
Yeah, now it's time for him to cash out. Like, he took the prove it deal and he proved it. I don't know what more he's got to prove. I think he's going to get a multi-year deal. I'm going to be really surprised if it's from the Chiefs.
Would you have any interest in Robert Woods? Coming off an injury last year, he's been productive when he's been healthy, but when he got hurt with LA 2 years ago, remember famously he got hurt, they brought in OBJ, they go on to a Super Bowl, all of that. Never worked for him in Tennessee. That's another one I'd be, if you were guaranteeing there would be another acquisition at wide receiver, I would actually say, you know what, I'd be intrigued at that because he'll probably be pretty cheap. But if that's your replacement for Juju, I would be all the way out on it.
Yeah, I would be too. You're still able to play a lot when he's on the field. He was out there for 72% of Tennessee snaps this year, but getting less productive, fewer yards per catch, although some of that was having to play with Josh Dobbs and Malik Willis at times this season. Only had 2 touchdowns last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a player on the downturn in his career, I think pretty clearly getting into his 30s, and I'd be really surprised the Chiefs don't strike me as the kind of front office who's going to acquire a player in the hope that they've got a good year left. That doesn't really fit their MO, does it?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's really not. They've tried to go younger when they've signed guys.
If they're trying to squeeze the last drop from a guy, it's been on the defensive side. They haven't done that with skill guys.
True. Good point.
They haven't done that with skill guys so much. They have done it with pass rushers, Terrell Suggs and Melvin Ingram, and those were midseason guys. But Carlos Dunlap this past year, give him a 1-year deal. I don't see them doing that with wide receiver. If they're going to go get a 30-something wide receiver, what about cashing in some of your draft capital and seeing if the Arizona Cardinals would come up off of DeAndre Hopkins?
That's what I was going to get to next, because he is reportedly on the market. The Cardinals are resetting. They are in hell right now. I mean, seriously, the cap's not in a great spot. Their quarterback is going to be out for most of, if not all of the season. New head coach, new general manager. They are resetting that thing big time.
First-year coordinators.
Yeah, it makes sense to move on from DeAndre Hopkins, who at this point of his career probably wants to go win and also still get paid. Would you make that move? That, I think, obviously puts to the test you can live with good because you already have enough great. DeAndre Hopkins at his best has been, at one point in time, he was almost universally considered the best wide receiver in football. In fact, before Adams took that crown a couple years ago, I think Hopkins was at the top of that list. He's still a good player. Obviously got suspended this past year because he works out with a personal trainer who has gotten multiple players suspended. Like, I'm pretty sure this guy has ties to Brian Cushing. That should be your number one red flag. But he's still a great player when he's on the field. His numbers were great for only playing, 10 games last year?
Yeah.
11 games. He had awesome numbers for a shortened season.
And he was catching passes for a chunk of that from Trace McSorley and
David Blau.
That's who it was.
It was a godsend for him when he got Colt McCoy to throw him the ball. Like, that's what Arizona was dealing with a year ago. I would be careful about what you had to give up to get him. Like, I don't think I'd move off of a first-round pick. I think with the 5th-year option and the cheap cost-control deal, considering Kelsey's still getting paid a lot, you still got to pay Mahomes a lot. Chris Jones, I think, is going to get a new contract. I think Orlando Brown is going to get a lot of money one way or the other. I wouldn't want to give up a first, but... Well, I mean, shoot, even if you got a deal where you maybe got a second back, kind of like that Orlando Brown deal, I don't expect that to happen, but a deal like that where you didn't have to give up a massive amount of that draft capital, I'd pick up the phone. I'd talk about it.
Yeah, like I'm not giving up my first-round pick, even number 31 overall for 31-year-old DeAndre Hopkins. I'll do it for maybe 27-year-old DeAndre Hopkins, but I'm not doing that for DeAndre Hopkins coming off a steroid suspension. That being said, if the price is a couple of mid-round picks, and then you got to pick up cap hit for next year's $30.75 million.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. And then it's 26 the year after that. But that would be a guy who, he can get open. He can get down the field.
Yep.
Even he'll be 31 on opening day. You could still convince me that he would, behind Tyreek Hill, be the second best receiver you've ever given Patrick Mahomes. Wide receiver. Again, we don't count Kelsey as a wide receiver.
Oh, no, there's no question about that, I don't think. And here's the other thing, too. Hopkins is still a deep threat. He might not have top-end speed. He is undeniably a deep threat, and he's a consistent one. That's what stands out to me. Tyreek Hill, consistent deep threat. MVS is not that. whether it's because of his hands or his route running or just that's not his game. He's not a consistent deep threat. Justin Watson isn't a consistent, any given play, he could catch a 40-yard pass kind of weapon. DeAndre Hopkins is. I would talk about it. I would absolutely be interested in at least calling. Who is their new GM? I don't even know.
He's bald. Or is he? Or is that the old guy that was bald? I don't know.
You might be thinking of Steve Keim, who they fired. No, their new guy is bald too. Monty Osenforth.
That's what it is.
Yeah. I'd call him. I'd say, hey, look, we can offer you X, Y, and Z picks.
Yeah.
What's the interest level?
A second and a fourth?
Oh, I would do that. I would absolutely do that.
Yeah.
I'd throw in another one, honestly, to make that happen. Again, not a first, but throw in a day 3 pick too. I would do it.
Here's the thing that I think is interesting that might depend on just how aggressively the Chiefs pursue wide receiver, whether that's through trade, whether that's in free agency, whether that's in the draft, where they could 31 overall might be Zay Flowers as a straight line replacement for like McCole Hardman, but better. Like that's what you're looking at if you draft Zay Flowers 31st overall, if he's there.
Yeah, well, that's true. Based on what I've seen in the mock draft world, some people think he's a top 20 player. Some think, no, why would you take this guy in the first 2 rounds?
He's not real big, but
no,
he's always open.
See, and that's another interesting point about the draft. And that's why this is the most fascinating position for me outside of offensive tackle, because you just got to figure out what to do with Brown. Although if you're just going to tag him, I guess that's already taken care of.
Done and dusted.
If you are drafting a receiver, and I do think the Chiefs will take at least one receiver in the draft.
I do too.
What are you prioritizing? Are you prioritizing a true wide receiver, or are you prioritizing more of a weapon receiver like a McCole Hardman? Because you do have Tony. Tony already, you could, and I know some people view him this way, he's sort of bigger McCole Hardman, like do a little bit more than McCole Hardman.
And Tony's the guy that interests me because how many snaps are you planning on getting out of Kadarius Toney?
Great question.
In a full season.
Great question.
One, you asked that because of his injury history, but he is, I heard, I forget which podcast I was listening to. It might have been Bomani Jones talking to Dominic. It was Dominic Foxworth who was on it one way or another, who was on ESPN, who I like a lot, and I think is really insightful. But the comparison came up that Kadarius Toney is kind of like Percy Harvin. Ooh. Where when he's on the field, he's getting the ball. Like, you don't put him on the field to be a decoy.
Look at the Super Bowl.
Yeah. You put that dude on the field to get him the football because he's fast and he's shifty. He can break your ankles in a phone booth. He's just that special kind of talent, but availability is an ability too, and that's one that he really hasn't displayed over the course of his NFL career. That was the case for Harvin too. He had concussion issues. He had some other injuries that cropped up. But boy, when Percy Harvin was on the field, you knew it because he got the ball and he made plays. And I wonder if Toney is sort of the Chiefs version of Harvin, where he might not get much more than 10, 15 snaps a game, but you're going to remember all of them because he's going to touch the ball on those snaps. So if that's his role, then they're going to need to look at wide receiver and say, yeah, we need to upgrade this position. I don't think they view Kadarius Toney as like wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. I think he's part of that position group, but I think he's more weapon than he is like a big factor on the depth chart.
No, I think that's entirely fair. I think that makes a lot of sense. So to me, then that says if you're taking a receiver in the first 3 rounds, you're taking a guy who can line up at the X or is your Z receiver and is a true wide receiver.
Somebody bigger, somebody who can go deep, somebody who can catch the back shoulder fade, somebody who can get a quick release, get open on a slant on 2nd and 8. Like, you'd love to find the next DK Metcalf, late in the 2nd round, like the Seahawks did. I think they got him last pick of the 2nd round. Like, if there's that guy out there, get that guy. Like that, but that's the kind of player we're talking about. And that's not fair because there aren't a lot of DK Metcalfs in the world.
No.
Like, just in terms of athleticism and ability, but somebody along those lines, a big body who can still win at the line of scrimmage and get open quick and work those short middle areas in the same way that Juju did. Alternately, again, there's still a chance I think that they could bring Juju back, but my suspicion is he's going to be more on demand in this free agent crop, and that might price him out of Kansas City.
Off the top of your head, because we'll get to a break here in just a second, are there any wide receivers in this draft that you think some team is going to love this dude? I'm banking on him being a star.
Other than Zay Flowers?
Other than Zay Flowers. Well, I mean, it could be Zay Flowers.
Yeah, Zay Flowers is like, I am hoping against hope that the Seahawks overdraft him at number 20.
Yeah.
Like, that's a dude Seattle has been dying for, like a slot receiver.
Yeah.
Because they've got two guys on the outside that are great, and they don't have anybody else who's a threat. And putting a guy like Zay Flowers in the slot would be huge.
I think he's going to be a very good player in the NFL. My guy's Jordan Addison from USC. Like, every time I see a mock draft that has him 20th or lower, I think 19 teams will regret this. He's going to be a superstar. And I hope he's a Green Bay Packer. I don't think they will do it, but I hope they do it because, man, he would be perfect in that
Revealing
offense.
Our draft crushes.
Yeah.
Well, 2 months ahead of the draft.
This quickly became who do our favorite teams need to draft, not necessarily the Kansas City Chiefs. We've got to get to a break. What is wrong with you is next. Tim Fitzgerald will join us later this hour here on 580 Sports Talk. What the hell is right? It's time for What's Wrong with You on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Two new stories going head-to-head today to try to take down our weekly winner, what I decided to dub the definitely not dead diagnosis. A couple paramedics in Florida who have been suspended from their jobs after they pronounced a living man to be dead. We actually had a texter on the Big O Tires text line yesterday who said based on their knowledge of training for paramedics and EMTs, they're not supposed to be able to have that call at that stage of an incident. Like, they never should have been in a position where they said, yes, this man is dead, unless he was, obviously dead, which he was clearly not.
Because he was breathing.
Unbelievably terrible. So that is our current weekly winner. That's going to be tough to take down. Dan, I will have you go first today.
We are going to Fort Myers, Florida. And the person who wrote this story for NBC2.com is clearly gunning for a Pulitzer here. I can't tell it better than they write it. First, we get a history of the key lime pie in the beginning here, and then we get to the story.
Oh, man, this reminds me of our guy, Will Greenlee.
Yeah, it might be a Will Greenlee. One Fort Myers man went out of his way to obtain his favorite post-dinner treat for his mother's birthday. He took the custard creation and secured it in his refrigerator, where it would remain until the big day. He even warned another person in the residence, David Powelson, to please leave his mother's edible present unsullied in the icebox. But Powelson, drawn to the dessert reminiscent of a cartoon character, was losing all control to a pie in waiting. On February 15th, around 5 p.m., the man slipped into a daze in his recliner when something caught his eye. Powelson wasn't just eating the key lime pie, but was making sure there wasn't even a crumb left behind. "Why didn't you save me just one piece?" the dejected man extolled to Powelson. As the man's blood began to boil over the disrespect shown to his key lime pie, he confronted David, and the two became embroiled in a war of words over the final course. In his attempt to de-escalate things, Powelson tried to cool off his heated opponent by dumping 2 large glasses of water all over the pieless victim. With that, the Lee County Sheriff's Office was called, where the victim and Powelson each explained their side of the story. Following a brief investigation, Powelson was arrested and charged with battery on a person 65 or older. I presume that's only because eating someone's pie disrespectfully is not a crime on the Florida books.
Did Charles Dickens write this? Is he getting paid by the word?
It is easily the most verbose "what is wrong with you" I've encountered so far this year.
Wow. This guy sucks. Don't eat the pie. Go get your own.
What did he go Homer Simpson like that? I'm gonna go like this, and if you get eaten, it's your fault.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah, man. It's like, hey, stay off the pie, man. I made that for my mom. Okay, that's all it needed to be. If it made you want key lime pie, then run down to the Perkins or whatever and get your own.
God, I would do horrible things to get some key lime pie right now.
I know you're a big key lime pie.
Love key lime pie. Oh, it's so good. I understand the draw of it. I do. But man, just get your own.
Yeah.
Just go get your own. This guy sucks. I'm glad he's in jail. My story is going to take us to Stafford Township, New Jersey, where a man from the town of Barnegat decided that he wasn't going to return his GMC Sierra that he was taking out on a test drive.
Oh.
Classic story. And he thought, I'm just going to steal this car. So he did not return to the Barlow GMC car dealership the morning after he took the 2023 white GMC Sierra. By the way, our perpetrator here is 47-year-old Jason D'Angelo. He left on Saturday morning at about 11 a.m. So the car dealership said, okay, well, we didn't get our car back. We're going to call the police. The Tuckerton Borough Police Department then observed the SUV on Route 539 in New Jersey and attempted to stop it. The vehicle, however, did not pull over, drove off the highway, and the police just decided not to pursue it. That seems like a mistake on their part. This information was received by the Stafford Township Police Department's Drug Enforcement Unit, which then gained intelligence that the vehicle and D'Angelo were in the Atlantic City area near the Tropicana Casino. The DEU was able to locate the vehicle in the parking lot of that casino unoccupied. They then contacted the New Jersey State Police Casino Operations Unit to try to find D'Angelo in the casino. Through coordination with security at the casino, they did indeed find D'Angelo, where he was arrested without incident and was sent back to Stafford Township.
He just thought he could roll out, take it to the casino, get some gambling in.
God, I got a date with a craps table and I don't have a ride. Wait a minute. Yes, I do.
They'll be fine if it's a couple hours, right? Just gonna play a few hands of blackjack and then we'll have it back safely.
Who doesn't take a 36-hour test drive? Come on. That is just unbelievably bad. Come on, man. Get an Uber.
Yeah.
Have a friend drive you. Take the train. I'm sure there's public transport to get to Atlantic City. It's a major destination.
It's not your car, man.
No. Oh, my gosh. You get your vote for today.
I got to go with the guy who disrespectfully ate the key lime pie.
Yeah, I'm with you. Why did you dump water on the guy? Come on.
2 glasses of water.
So disrespectful on so many levels.
Yeah, I genuinely feel bad for the guy who acquired a key lime pie for his mom and then not only did not get to give the pie to his mom, but then got 2 glasses of water dumped on him.
Yeah, what a tool. I don't like that guy.
Yeah, he sucks.
But does he beat the definitely not dead diagnosis?
No. I don't think so.
They said he was dead. He was breathing.
He was
breathing.
He was not dead.
Oh, my God. That is our winner for today. I think that might win the week. That
Dead-ish.
Strong. Dead-ish. That is a strong, strong entry. It wins today. And what is wrong with you? We've got to get to another break, and Tim Fitzgerald will hop on next on 580 Sports Talk. Not a big fan of Sticky, but certainly a phenomenal journalist covering all things Kansas State athletics at GoPowerCat.com. He is Tim Fitzgerald. He joins us every Wednesday at the bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for our Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. You can also find Fitz over on Twitter at Life of Fitz. Fitz, I've got to ask you first things first before we get to the big win for K-State last night over Baylor. Is your guy Ryan Gilbert getting a raise? We've had Ryan on the show before, does a great job covering the Cats over at GoPowerCat with you. We heard from Jerome Tang this weekend, though, that he directly influenced some changes to the starting lineup, getting Desi Sills in there.
It's incredible. I mean, the guy's a coaching genius, and we don't know it, but he is. I kind of wonder if he didn't help Jerome Tang switch up the defense, or I don't know. He made some tweaks behind the scenes probably, but the guy's a brilliant young coach, and he works for me.
It's a pretty nice asset to have. I will say this, too, though. I don't think there's a ton of coaches out there, Fitz, that would openly admit to saying, oh, yeah, I saw what beat writer or blogger or whoever put on Twitter. I saw their tweet, and I remember it 3 days later. You don't hear that from coaches very often. Most guys say, yeah, I don't even know what the tweeter is. That's a much different approach from Jerome Tang, but it's refreshing to a degree.
Well, yes, but in the future, he can't tell me, well, I don't read that stuff on Twitter. Because au contraire, Ryan Gilbert apparently has your ears. I was funny. I mean, it's a little bit snarky from Coach, but that's okay because he did tweak the lineup, as Ryan suggested, and they kept the tweak for the Baylor game, and now they're won back-to-back games, thus proving the brilliance of Ryan Gilbert as a young coach.
Yeah, it's been a pretty darn good last couple of games. A win over the weekend that we both thought here on this program was much needed. Then they come out and they stomped Baylor in the second half last night, really just wore the Bears down. I know that team's got defensive troubles, but Dan and I both think they're Final Four caliber, and K-State looked like the dominant team coming out of the break at halftime last night. What was the big difference? I mean, Baylor had that big run at the end of the first half. They obviously have that extremely talented guard trio. What was the big difference maker that got K-State out to such a big win? Not just a win overall, but a double-digit win.
And a dominant win in the second half. Really impressive. I mean, you stop and think about Marquise Noel as a three guard. Cam Carter and Desi Sills went a combined 0 for 13 from three-point range. And Baylor went on a 21-3 run during the course of the game. But K-State won. And I think that shows you how well they played in every other area. Outscoring a pretty darn good Baylor team, like 42-16 in the paint. Honestly, a lot of intangible things like 50-50 balls went K-State's way. They fought for a lot of loose balls. They only had 7 turnovers in the game. I mean, Marquise Noel struggled to shoot the ball. Ended up with, a double-double because he was 10 of 10 from the free throw line as they fouled him a lot down the stretch. But he had 10 assists. They did everything else except shoot the three ball, exceptionally well, and they gave up a huge run. It's amazing that K-State's just got a whole nother level that they can achieve. I mean, beating a Baylor team like that, really showing that you were the better team, no doubt, in the second half, and knowing that, by the way, your best shooter didn't shoot it well, and you gave up a huge run in the first half. When that team wants to really lock in and play well, they can be really good. But here's the difference. That's where I think you asked. They looked fresh. And it sounds like they backed off them a little bit in practice. They've said, okay, we're going to turn it down. You guys are tired. You're playing tired. Keontae Johnson seemed rejuvenated. He had a lot more hop in his step. He was jumping higher, a lot more active on offense. If they can keep that level of freshness and play at that kind of level, boy, they're really dangerous. They really are.
Our guest is Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com. He is the publisher at GoPowerCat.com, and he joins us every Wednesday at this time on 580 Sports Talk for the Azura Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. Fitz, we joked about Desi Sills being inserted into the starting lineup, but over the last 2 games, he's been in the lineup, and in the last 2 games, Kansas State has won. What is the most observable difference you see when K-State is playing the 3 guards together, Noel, Carter, and Sills in that starting 5?
I'm actually shocked it's working that well. It really is. It makes you so small. You have Keontae Johnson and having to slide down to defend the 4, which honestly in this league, the 4 is often comparable to Keontae. Certainly in strength, Keontae's probably stronger. But it makes you awfully small, but it also makes you really good on defense. Those 2 dudes can really defend. And it also makes you a little bit more threat to break down, get in the open court and break down the defense, and, in the half court, get inside the defense. Because you now have 3 guys that can either shoot it or put it on the floor. But again, none of them shot it well, but they did a good job kind of dissecting a zone. I think Scott Drew said they used 4 different defenses, all of which didn't work. I just think it gives them more energy. But honestly, I was really surprised that when they did tweak the lineup, that was what they did. and they go for moving Naquan Tomlin into the post position, a guy who really hasn't played a lot of basketball. In my theory, it would make you a worse rebounding, worse defending team in the post, but that's not what we've seen. They've really been able to be a pretty good team with that lineup.
Cam Carter, to that point, had 8 rebounds last night, in addition to his 10 points. He and Naquan Tomlin combined for 18 points. And a big part of college basketball, as you well know, Fitz, is that complementary play. Not even secondary guys. Sometimes it's your tertiary guys that if they come up big, then you're looking at a pretty good opportunity to win a basketball game. How important were Carter and Tomlin's contributions last night, and what can they get from those two guys here down the stretch? As you're talking about two players, first year in the Big 12, Carter's just a sophomore. Tomlin, of course, it's well documented how little relative basketball experience he has relative to his peers. What do you think is the ideal level of production that Kansas State can get from those two guys?
Cam Carter's got to be the defense and rebounding guy from the guard position, because a lot of guys have had rebounding issues because the guards aren't getting involved enough. And if you go back and look at that game, a lot of those rebounds, I don't want to, belittle what Cam did, but he was just in the right place. And maybe that's positioning on his part. It just looked like a lot of balls ended up in his hands in terms of funny bounces, getting batted around. But he was a big role player in those 50-50 balls, particularly coming off the rim. Desi needs to continue to defend at a high level, because we haven't really talked about it. I know I haven't with even my walk and talk, how good the defense was at times against Baylor. It was really good. And they can really shoot the ball from the outside. And K-State did a pretty good job of bottling things up. But Desi also needs to get going downhill. And I thought K-State really kind of flipped the switch at the second half when Desi got going downhill and was able to get to the rim and score. I think that messes with defenses because he's so fast going to the rim. I will say he's as fast as going to the rim in a purple uniform as I've seen since Denny Clemente. I mean, he goes at 100 miles per hour. And what amazes me is a lot of guys will kind of take that last step a little slower to gather themselves to the layup or to get to the rim. Not him. I mean, he doesn't know where he's going to end up, but he's going 100% all the way through to the rim. He scores. He's really good at it. And then he might end up in press row behind the basket. But they just both have their roles. And if they play to them while the other main guys get things done, good team, really good team.
Fitz, we did not leave the arena as a press corps until something like an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes after the final buzzer. And then I had about a 45 to 50-minute drive back to Topeka. When I walked in the door to my house last night, my ears were still ringing. That was an incredibly loud crowd at Bramlage Coliseum last night. Sandstorm is back in the rotation. They did a light show with it last night with everybody holding up their cell phone flashlights that really seemed to charge it up even more. It's felt like a party at Bramlage Coliseum. And I know we've heard from a lot of longtime K-State fans who've expressed the sentiment that, man, this is how it should feel all the time, or this is how it used to feel at a Hearn Fieldhouse when it was really bouncing. What is your perspective as a longtime observer of this program and as somebody who knows what it's like when K-State basketball is humming? What has it been like to see those atmospheres at Bramlage Coliseum in year one under this Jerome Tang regime?
I appreciate so much that Jerome Tang understands the history of this program in a way that I don't think any non-K-State coach coming in has ever understood. And that includes Huggs and Frank and, Bruce and, of course, Wooldridge and Asbury. I don't think they fully grasp the entire history of K-State basketball the way Jerome Tang does. He knows it's important within the culture of Kansas State. He's emphasized that that's a big reason why he's here, is because this fan base values basketball success. And even though it's gone dormant at times and the life's been sucked out of the program at different times for a variety of reasons, the fans still want basketball success and to have it and to watch a coach stoke the fire. Not just expect it after the game, but he demands it before the game. He wants people to come and this is what we're going to do. We're going to play hard and you're going to cheer hard. It was pretty impressive. It was an impressive environment last night. There was some unsold tickets, which I think eventually will be solved. But boy, it's a fun team to watch when they're really good. And Sandstorm was so cool. I mean, I just think he might deserve a Nobel Peace Prize for solving the great chant debate at Kansas State within 1 year of walking into town.
And he didn't do it by condescending to the students or scolding the students. He just put it in a way that the students were, by and large, willing to accept. Like, yeah, it does sound cooler when we're chanting about us.
It does. I mean, it's pretty simple. And it started off with the Wabash Cannonball, and he got it out of that. I mean, even he was kind of offended by that. This is a school tradition. You're chanting, let's be better, but he turned it around to be, let's be proud of ourselves. In victory, when we're playing well, why are we thinking about another team? Think about ourselves. And, and he put in the equity, the time, the investment with the student body, with the hang with tangs, with going to fraternities and sororities, with going to the dorms. Just, they show up at basketball tournaments, that maybe a fraternity sorority is hosting for a philanthropy. They put in the time with the students to have the credibility to make an ask like that, and they received their answer. I hope it sticks, because what we saw, as Gene Taylor, athletic director, tweeted after the game, that's what it was supposed to be like the whole time. The turning off the light and adding in the phone camera, the phone lights on your back of your phone, was a cool thing. Not unique. It's done all over the place, but it worked perfectly for Sandstorm.
Fitz, is K-State locked into a 3 seed now, assuming that there's not some sort of absolute disaster over the final 3 games of the regular season? Are they for sure nailed on a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament in your eyes?
Yeah. I mean, they've got 3 in the regular season to go, at least 1 in Kansas City. So they got 4 here. I mean, short of going 0-4, yeah. But that still might make them a 4 seed. Guys, I'll be honest. I was really shocked after losing back-to-back games on the road to Tech and Oklahoma, 2 of the lesser teams, the non-tournament teams. They were still in the 3 line of the committee's top 16. That really shocked me. I thought they might be on the 4 line, but the 3 line, guys, we need to start talking about the opposite. They win a couple more this regular season. They win a couple in Kansas City. I don't even think they need to win the tournament, because by then the bracket's kind of baked in, unless something major happens. They might be on the 2 line in that scenario, which is just unbelievable. Someplace Kansas State basketball hasn't been in a very, very long time, with that kind of national respect going into the tournament. It would just be huge.
Final thing then, Fitz, as we look ahead to this coming weekend, because there are still 3 games left on the schedule in the regular season. Cats have to go on the road to take on Oklahoma State, which I think has a lot of potential, but is reeling over their last 3 games. 3 straight losses, have not really played well in any of them. Not going to say should it be an easy win for K-State, but I imagine that's one the Cats should be able to wrap up without too much stress, hopefully.
Well, I thought that the last 2 road games, but Oklahoma State seems to have had their little flurry, and they've come back to earth a little bit. They're probably beginning to wonder if they had played themselves into the tournament and might be backing out. I think they're in the tournament, but they probably look at the K-State game as a must-win. So you're going to have to match the home team's energy, which they haven't done the last 2 times out. But hopefully the fresher version of Kansas State, if you're a K-State fan, these Wildcats will go down there and get the win. You get the win, and you still have Oklahoma coming up at home. That means you're going to end up at least with 11 wins in the Big 12 in Jerome Tang's first year, maybe 12 if you go to West Virginia and win. It's amazing. It's a brilliant coaching job by the entire staff. From the moment they walked on campus, they had a vision of the program. They knew what they wanted to do with the program. And even as we watched them collect players and begin to wonder if it was good enough, they knew what they had. They're really good at evaluating fairly what they're recruiting and how they'll fit in. And this is the result. Maybe even surprising to them that they're in this high of a position, but still, they have followed their playbook perfectly, and it has worked.
For all the best coverage of all things K-State, head to GoPowerCat.com. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Tim Fitzgerald is its publisher. You can also find him on Twitter at Life of Fitz, and he joins us every Wednesday for the Azura Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up. As always, Fitz, we appreciate the time.
You bet, boys.
That's Tim Fitzgerald. One more hour of 580 Sports Talk is up next. Hey now, final hour of 580 Sports Talk coming up on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW. Also heard online at 580WIBW.com and viewed on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by on your Wednesday afternoon, February 22nd, 2023. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero, your crew for the final hour of the show today. If you've missed any of the show up until this point, head to the podcasts tab of 580WIBW.com. Click on 580 Sports Talk, and that is where you are going to find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show. Coming up, though, in the final hour of the program today, we'll get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot in just a matter of moments. We will also get to how many teams the Big 12 legitimately is going to get in the NCAA tournament. That's coming up in just a little bit. And also, we've got some best bets for you tonight. A lot of college basketball action, some other action from around the world of sports as well that you may be interested in. So all that is coming up over the next hour here on 580 Sports Talk. Of course, we'll get to your texts and your comments as well. The Big O Tires text line is 785-272-9429. And the comment section can be found on our YouTube channel, Sports on 580 WIBW. Hop on in and let us know what your thoughts are about whatever we are talking about on the show today. By the way, Dan, you know what day of the week it is?
Wednesday.
Not just Wednesday. It is the final America East Wednesday of the season.
Oh, it's the final America East Wednesday. Of course, I had that on my calendar and I just forgot.
Everyone will play on Saturday, and then they play Tuesday next week. It's the final. And in fact, right now on my second screen, right over here to my right, UMass Lowell is visiting UMBC.
Are we fading the Retrievers?
We have faded the Retrievers into hell. Faded as far as we can take them.
My poor
bad
Retriever
dogs.
boys.
Bad dogs.
No, they're all good boys.
You're going to bop them with a newspaper. Bad dogs. They have not been kind to the old wallet the last couple of America East Wednesdays. We're riding the Riverhawks today.
Oh, no.
I don't know if there are many. Are there rivers in Lowell, Massachusetts? I have no idea. I don't really know anything about UMass Lowell. In fact, I didn't even realize they were in the America East until like November of this year.
Me either.
Barely a Division I team. So we'll get to some best bets, including some America East action later on in the show. But first, and most importantly, let's get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines, Dan. They're brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas, who you can go visit online at bluedotkansas.com. Got some updates here to lead off from what's going on down in Alabama, down in Tuscaloosa. The situation involving Brandon Miller, among others. Now, Brandon Miller, the superstar freshman for the Crimson Tide and head coach Nate Oates, likely, almost certainly going to be a top 5 pick in the NBA draft this year. He's going to be the National Freshman of the Year. He has been absolutely fantastic for the Crimson Tide. Well, as we touched on briefly yesterday, it turns out, based on testimony from police officers in a case involving a former Alabama player who allegedly committed a murder outside of Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa earlier on this year, the actual murder weapon, allegedly, was handed over to the alleged shooter by Brandon Miller, the Alabama freshman forward. Now, the actual context of how that happened, it's not entirely known. The testimony from the police indicated that the shooter handed over, he called, texted Miller and said, "Hey, I need a gun," or "I need my gun." It's unknown exactly what he said. Miller then brought it to Darius Miles, the alleged shooter, and then from that point on, the incident took place.
One of the two alleged shooters,
yes.
Miles and a gentleman not affiliated with Alabama basketball, Michael Lynn Davis, who Miles claims was the shooter.
Yes. So that is an important part of this, is that the gun was allegedly, and I'm trying to be very careful here, Miller gave the gun to Miles, and then Miles' claim is that Davis is the one who actually fired the fatal shot that killed Jamia Harris. It is a horrific story. I mean, it is truly tragic. It is sad. None of this needed to happen. The roots of why there was a gun needed in the first place is very unfortunate, and I will let you read about this. The stuff has been public record, except for the Miller stuff, for a while now. Nate Oates, we talked about this yesterday. he had his weekly press conference and essentially said, we've known about this for a while, and I can't control everything that goes on outside of practice, and Brandon was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's really not what seems to have happened. Like, that is entirely glossing over the reality of the situation.
Yeah, he went to the wrong place at the wrong time and did so on purpose.
With a gun.
With a thing in his car that made it the wrong place. That contributed to the making of it as the wrong place.
Bad all over.
So Jim Standridge is one of the attorneys representing Brandon Miller, and he put out a statement earlier today, essentially claiming that the weapon in question was concealed in the back seat of Miller's car, that Miller never saw it, and that Miller was already on his way to pick up Miles when Miles texted him to bring his gun. He was not involved, claims Standridge, in the transfer of the weapon from Miles to Davis, was not aware of a previous confrontation between two parties. This is probably more charitable. It could be more charitable than the situation deserves. But if I have a friend who has a gun and they tell me, hey, man, can you bring my gun? Like, my first thought, if it's my friend, is probably not, they are going to use this gun to commit a murder. My thought may instead be, maybe my friend is in trouble. Maybe my friend is in a situation that he feels like he needs to be strapped up for whatever reason it might be. That is the most charitable I can be. And like I said, maybe that's more charitable than this situation deserves. But the claim is that Miller was unaware of a confrontation, just knew that his teammate wanted him to bring a gun that was sitting in the back seat. Now, again, maybe would have been good to ask some questions if you were Brandon Miller. Maybe would have been good to say, hey, man, everything okay? Hey, do we need to get out of here?
You good? Yeah.
Everything good? Like, if there's a situation where you're asking for a gun, again, maybe I'm not jumping to the conclusion that you're going to use it in the commission of a murder, but I also have some questions that I'd like to have answered. And I'm not just going to assume that, oh yeah, this is just for show, or, I'm not assuming anything at that point. And it's all very unfortunate and tragic, but what it does not appear is going to happen is that there are going to be any repercussions for Brandon Miller in particular. The chief deputy district attorney in Tuscaloosa, Paula Whitley, told AL.com on Tuesday that there's nothing they could charge Miller with at this stage.
Yes. So I have done, as much surface level reading about this situation as I can. And I am not a lawyer. I should never even be considered to be a lawyer. But based on what I can tell, a lot of this, at least in the state of Alabama, comes down to intent. And that if there's no obvious reason to believe that Miller knew what the gun was going to be used for, or knew what Miles and Davis were intending to do, et cetera, there's not really a crime you can charge them with. They were unaware of, or he was unaware of, what was going to happen in that case. This is a statement released by the University of Alabama today and Alabama Athletics. It says, UA Athletics continues to cooperate fully with law enforcement in the ongoing investigation of this tragic situation. Based on all the information we have received, Brandon Miller is not considered a suspect in this case, only a cooperative witness. Today's statement from Brandon's lawyer adds additional context that the university has considered as part of its review of the facts. Based on all the facts we have gathered, Brandon remains an active member of our team. They're not going to sit him down, and the truth is probably somewhere between most and least charitable possible outcomes or views of this story. I think this all sounds obviously terrible, and it all eventually led to a woman losing her life, which is horrible. And again, the background of this, if you want to go read about it, it's very, very sad. I'm not going to, based on this information we have, which might not all be complete, I'm not going to assume anything about Brandon Miller. All I'm going to say is that the person who comes out of this looking worse than anyone is Nate Oates. How do you give that crass of a statement yesterday? And then at night, he releases another statement through the school, which they put up on ESPN and has made the rounds now. Or I want to clarify my unfortunate comments from earlier. He didn't really clarify anything. He didn't fix or change anything. I just don't know how somebody at the school doesn't say, hey, Nate, make sure you don't say X, Y, or Z, or you do say A, B, or C, so that you keep your nose clean of all this and it doesn't make us look bad. Because that's all he ended up doing.
Mm-hmm.
A bad situation all around.
Yeah, really, really is. Very sad. First headline for me today on our Blue Dot of Kansas headlines. Love a good sports documentary series. Don't you, Brendan?
Oh, absolutely.
There have been a lot of good ones in recent memory, and many of them have come from the folks at Netflix who have released fly-on-the-wall documentary series charting the course of the season in Formula One, and now recently, like within the last couple of months, pro tennis and professional golf, the PGA Tour. I'll watch pretty much anything that you give me that is sports documentary related. Well, now we have a football one coming, and one very, very big name is attached. 3 NFL quarterbacks agreed to wear a microphone for every game of the 2022 season and provide away from the field access as well for a Netflix documentary series entitled Quarterback. It will premiere this summer and will feature Marcus Mariota of the Atlanta Falcons, Kirk Cousins of the Minnesota Vikings, and the aforementioned headline name Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. In a statement, Mahomes said this: I'm excited for fans to get an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at an unforgettable season for the entire Chiefs organization and for my family. From welcoming home a new baby in the middle of the season to welcoming the Lombardi Trophy back to Kansas City, our crew was there for it all. Our crew. Mahomes' company, 2 p.m. Productions, will help produce the series. This new Netflix show will show the time, preparation, and balance that it takes to be an NFL quarterback and perform on the biggest stage. Also producing the series, NFL Films and Omaha Productions, which Peyton Manning is involved in.
They do a great job with everything they do.
Yes, the Places shows on ESPN Plus are Omaha Productions and are very, very well done and very enjoyable. So we will have a season inside, essentially, with Patrick Mahomes. And what better way to remember and reminisce? Certainly this show is due for a summer release. When you're in the thick of summer and you're jonesing for football, this will hit and probably make a lot of Chiefs fans out there very, very happy. So make sure you've got your Netflix ducks in a row for summertime and this series.
Did you see the full release from, I must have been from Netflix, about this show? The way they describe the 3 quarterbacks is so funny.
Oh, it's absolutely hysterical. I have it pulled up right here. The upcoming show will feature behind-the-scenes access to some of the biggest moments of the season. As Mahomes set an NFL record for total offense on his way to winning the league and Super Bowl MVP awards, Cousins engineered the greatest comeback in NFL history and led the Minnesota Vikings to an NFC North Division title. And Mariota took over as the starting quarterback in his first season with the Atlanta Falcons.
Poor Marcus Mariota.
It's like Patrick Mahomes did everything a quarterback can do. Won it all. Won everything that there is to win. Kirk Cousins was on a good team, and Marcus Mariota also played pro football in 2022.
I will say, the part of this outside of just the entire Mahomes arc that I'm most interested in is the end of the year for the Falcons. Because if you remember, Mariota lost the starting job and then said, oh, well, you know what? I've had knee problems for years and have never gotten a chance to go get it taken care of. I just lost my job. So now I'm going to go get it taken care of, and just left the team. I am actually very interested to see how that all unfolds. That is very unique.
Yeah, no kidding.
No, this is going to be cool. I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, I will eagerly watch this. I haven't really gotten as into Drive to Survive, the F1 docu-series, as a lot of people have, because, like, I'm not, like I said, not the biggest auto racing fan, and I'm definitely not going to get up at 2 a.m. and watch, like, the Grand Prix of Korea or wherever they're running races at 2 a.m. Like that's not really my speed. But Full Swing, the PGA Tour series that was released a week ago today, I'm halfway through that and enjoying it immensely. But again, I watch golf and like golf, so I'm kind of the target audience for that show. But I am enjoying it a lot, and I really look forward to enjoying Quarterback on Netflix this summer.
Oh, what, Full Swing is the golf one, right?
Full Swing is the golf one, yes.
My wife brought it up the other day. We were out at lunch, and she said, have you gotten Netflix back yet? Because we got rid of it a while ago, but I was going to bring it back because I want to watch that 90s show because I'm a big that 70s show fan. So I got to see the reboot. And she said there's a golf reality show that's gotten good reviews. And I said, a golf reality show? And actually, it's got a lot of actual, like, real golfers. It's not a bunch of Corn Ferry Tour guys.
No,
like real players.
The biggest names in the sport are part of that show. And I would say, like, for somebody who follows, like, I would say that I follow professional golf more closely than most. Jake probably follows it more closely than me. There are others who are even bigger fans than that, but I follow it. I have above average depth of knowledge about the PGA Tour. There are parts of it that don't work, but there are a lot of parts of it that do work. And if you do watch it, again, I'm 4 episodes into the 8. Just know that if you watch episode 4, you will be a Joel Damon fan for the rest of your life.
Never even heard of Joel Damon until this second right now.
You will not be able to help but root for him because of the very relatable premise of him saying out loud, hey, somebody's got to be the 70th best golfer in the world. It might as well be me.
You make a lot of money as the 70th best golfer in the world.
The director asking him, do you think you can win a major? And him going, no.
Hey, very realistic. I do appreciate that.
No,
I appreciate that a lot.
That is the best episode of the 4 I've watched so far. I don't know if any of you out there are watching Full Swing, but it comes recommended to me. The first episode is the Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas episode. Those aren't the most electrifying personalities, but hang with it. It will get better.
Have you ever seen, speaking of quarterbacks, you've seen QB1, right?
You know, I haven't like dove in and watched all of it. I've seen bits and pieces.
I saw most of the first season and essentially came away thinking I would hate to work with like high level recruits. I cannot imagine doing this for a living. It seems like it'd be miserable. And also was another early indication that Spencer Rattler probably not the best guy in the world. Probably not the kind of person I would choose to hang out with personally. Next headline for me, brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas, our 580 Sports Talk headlines for this Wednesday afternoon. The Tennessee Titans, all on their own today, essentially replenished the free agent market at a couple of different positions. They made 4 different cuts of fairly well-known veteran players that saves them about $38 million against the salary cap by cutting these players. They include left tackle Taylor Lewan, wide receiver Robert Woods, inside linebacker Zach Cunningham, and kicker Randy Bullock. So a quick note on all of these guys. We'll start in reverse order. Randy Bullock is not really all that good, but he is known as Fat Randy, so it's always fun when he comes on TV. But he's a very average, mediocre kicker. You could certainly do better for cheaper. Zach Cunningham has probably been more famous than good for most of his career. He was awesome in college at Vanderbilt. I played for the Texans for a while. Was fine. Played for the Titans for a couple years. Was fine. Not really anything special, but he's a depth piece probably at this stage of his career. He's not super old, but he's, I don't know, starter for a really bad linebacker core maybe somewhere. Robert Woods was injured 2 years ago with the Rams, missed most of their Super Bowl run. He was a really good receiver earlier in his career. He and Cooper Kupp actually made a really nice tandem in L.A., was signed with a decent amount of fanfare to Tennessee. It did not work out. He never quite took off, but was relatively productive, even with some bad quarterback play. And Taylor Lewan is probably certainly the most controversial player on this list. The best of them all at his respective position at his peak. He's been a very good player. He's also had a bunch of knee injuries the last couple of years, only played 2 weeks this season. He also has been accused of threatening to rape a woman who disagreed with him publicly, and made accusations against him. And to try to get her to be quiet, he threatened to rape her publicly. That
in college, right? That was when he was at the University of Michigan.
Yeah. Yes. There are a lot of stories, like from every single person who has ever been to the city of Nashville in the last 10 years about Taylor Lewan and his personal conduct. Good player, probably not a great guy, and may not be able to play anymore because he's had about 100 knee injuries. So that is the big group that the Tennessee Titans released today. That Robert Woods instantly becomes one of the 5 best wide receivers available, though, even 2 years off of a torn ACL, because the wide receiver group is so bad this year in free agency. Like
we talked about, like up until today, probably the 4th or 5th best wide receiver on the market was Mac Hollins. Like that's what you're dealing with that position group. Robert Woods, wrong side of 30, and trending downward production-wise. But I could see him landing a one-year deal from a contender, depending on how the wide receiver market shakes out. I don't think that's going to be the Chiefs, like we talked about the 4 o'clock hour, but I could definitely see somebody taking a flyer.
Yeah, I would say so. I think so, and I don't think he'll be too expensive either. Any other headlines for you today?
Yeah, one more quick one from the National Football League. The San Francisco 49ers quarterback, Brock Purdy, is still awaiting surgery to repair his right elbow because the swelling has not gone down enough to have the torn ulnar collateral ligament in it repaired. The procedure was supposed to happen today, but after a doctor's consultation on Tuesday, the surgery is going to be delayed. Purdy continues to have inflammation in the elbow, which is why it's been recommended that he postpones the surgery until it goes down further. Purdy and his doctors are aiming to regroup in early March with the hopes of getting it done then. But obviously, the sooner he gets it operated on, the sooner he can start rehab and the sooner he can return to play. So the more that this gets pushed back, the more that it throws into flux San Francisco's quarterback situation, which is going to be a fascinating story to track, especially as we get closer to training camp. Do they hold out and just kind of wait on Brock Purdy? Do they hand the ball back to Trey Lance, who was going to be their guy before he got hurt in week 2? What the 49ers do at quarterback, because we know they've got a Super Bowl caliber roster everywhere else, is going to be one of the most fascinating subplots of the 2023 season.
That is a brutal situation. Imagine being into year 3. Is this going to be year 3 for Lance or year 4?
Year 3, I think.
And still not having any clue what you have with him.
Let me double check that.
Yeah, I guess. It's only year 3, I think.
Yeah, he was first rounder in 2021.
2021,
so, yeah,
that's right. Yeah, third overall pick. Yeah, that's a tough spot to be in. I know it sounds ironic as I wear a Packers jersey today to be going into year 4 of having a young quarterback. You have no idea if he's going to be any good or not. But yeah, that's a tough situation for San Francisco to be in. That sounds horrible that the swelling still hasn't gone down. It's been a month since that game.
Yeah, they've been talking about it, a 6-month recovery for the injury. So, or after the surgery. So with surgery now pushed to early March, you're thinking early September at the absolute earliest that he's going to be complete with the rehab and the recovery. I mean, you're into the season at that point.
Honestly, I mean, as tough as that is for Brock Purdy, because obviously he wants to be healthy and wants to be able to play, it really blows for Trey Lance, too, because now you're going to start the year as the starting quarterback. If you assume it's 6 months exactly until Purdy could come back and play, just to use even numbers, you're looking at first week of September. He's healthy, ready to go week 1, week 2. The first time Lance has a bad game, the first time he has a bad throw and interception, you know how football fans are, you know how sports fans are. It's suddenly going to be, get Lance out of here, Brock Purdy in. He's going to be, whoever is in at quarterback is going to be looking over their shoulder the whole year. That's not a good spot to be in.
No.
That is not a good place. Man, I hope Brock Purdy is able to get that surgery soon. That's terrible.
Yeah, you can't help but feel bad for him. It's such a great story out of nowhere, last pick in the draft, 1 game away from reaching the Super Bowl as a rookie starting quarterback, and just the worst.
Let's take a quick time out here on 580 Sports Talk as we finish up our 580 Sports Talk headlines, brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas and their website, bluedotkansas.com. When we come back after the other end, or on the other side of this commercial break, how many Big 12 teams are actually going to get in to the NCAA tournament? We'll discuss after this on 580 Sports Talk. Getting a little funky on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk.
We gonna make it.
I dig
My
it.
bathtub lift up. My walls do a 360.
I like mixing it up a little bit.
Yeah, every now and again.
Coming up in just, what is it now? 4 weeks until Selection Sunday? 3 weeks? 3 weeks until Selection Sunday. March 11th? Or no, I'm sorry, March 12th.
Yes, March 12th.
Man, it's one of my favorite days of the year. I'm sure I've shared this before because I repeat myself all the time. But when I was in high school, one of my favorite things we did, and we never got permission to do this, we just kind of did, at our high school radio station, Selection Sunday every year, we would invite everybody who was involved in sports or we just knew who liked sports, brought them to the radio station Sunday afternoon at the end of the Big Ten championship game, ordered a ton of pizzas, and then watched the selection show with 30 high schoolers sitting on these couches watching it, and then would all fill out about 15 brackets before going home at 6 o'clock.
Nice.
One of my favorite traditions from when I was a kid. Teenager. Oh, it was so much fun. We're just 3 weeks away from Selection Sunday, 3.5 weeks away. We've been discussing off and on all year just how many teams in the Big 12 are going to get into the tournament this year. At one point, it was, oh my God, it could be everyone. You could see 10 out of 10 teams in the league making it to the NCAA tournament. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that is not going to happen. But is the dream of getting 9 completely dead? I think that's certainly possible, especially if you get a hot run from Texas Tech at the bottom of the league, going deep in the Big 12 tournament. I don't think it's likely necessarily, but I think it's at least possible at this point.
Yeah, I think you've got 6 teams that are stone locks, right?
Yes.
KU, Texas, Baylor, K-State, Iowa State, TCU. They're all going to the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
All going to be pretty high seeds. I think all 6 of those teams could be top 4 seeds.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Which is wild to think about. So after that, you've got the hottest of the teams is Texas Tech. They've won 5 straight games. That coincides neatly with the return of Fardaws Aimaq from injury. They've got Pop Isaacs back too, and now he's back in the starting lineup, and he shot it well last night. They went to Norman and won. They go 2-1 in their final 3 games, and they win their play-in game in Kansas City. They have 19 wins total. Now, we talked about them in One Gotta Go today. They rank 326th in non-conference strength of schedule, according to Ken Pom, which is about as bad as any bubble team you're going to find. It's just a disgusting non-conference schedule. They didn't play anybody good. The Power 5 or Power 6 teams that they played against in the non-conference were, I think, Ohio State, Georgetown, and they played one other team that's in a Power 5 or Power 6 league, Big East Power League. And they beat them. But it's a gross non-conference strength of schedule. And that's hurt their net ranking, and that's hurt their Ken Pom ranking. But does the committee look at Texas Tech? If indeed, let's say they get to 19 wins. Let's say they go 2-1 and win one of the pigtail games, and they get to 19-1 or 19 wins overall. Does the committee look at them and say, well, they got healthy late and they've been playing really good ball late? Does that maybe elevate them in their bubble status? Or should it?
Okay, that's important there. So I would say it probably does influence or pump them up at least a little bit in the committee's eyes. I mean, humans have a recency bias, and I'm sure that is going to stand out. Personally, to be honest with you, though, I don't agree that should be taken into account. Yeah, you're obviously a different team when you've got more of your good players healthy near the end of the season. But by the same token, injuries are part of sports more now than ever before. In every single sport we know, injuries are a part of it. It is something that you deal with and is baked into your expectations, hopes, ceiling, floor for the entire course of a season. And it's unfortunate that you miss some of those guys early on and for elongated periods of time. But I just feel like what should get the most emphasis is what you have done, not what you could do. It's the thing that has always bothered me with the college football playoff is that, well, if you're just taking the best teams, then why are you playing?
Right.
Just read Bill Connolly's returning production numbers for the year, play your rivalry games, and then say, okay, Alabama's the best team, Georgia's the best team, probably make an argument Tennessee's the best team this year, and then we'll throw Clemson a bone. Like, okay, what's even the point? Why just have a 4-team Super League and be done with it? So I feel the same way for the NCAA tournament that, yes, there are other factors that should go into play here, and you talk about the quality of opponent you played and all of that, but what have you done? Winning games should matter for getting into the tournament. I don't think you can put a ton of weight on certain guys returning. I just don't think I get it. I just don't think it's right.
For the record, quick correction. I said 5 straight wins. That's not right. 4 straight wins, 6 of 8.
Okay.
And 5 of 7 in Big 12 play after they beat LSU in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. And then they have wins in that time frame over Iowa State, K-State, and Texas, all at home. And now they got back-to-back road wins over West Virginia and Oklahoma. They have TCU Saturday, who they played TCU early in conference play when TCU was healthy and lost by 6. So they get TCU at home in Lubbock. Then they come to Lawrence, and then they finish at home against Oklahoma State. Like, if they add another top 25 win to their ledger, and then they beat Oklahoma State at home and they win a pigtail game and get to 19 wins, I think they might sneak in. Is 7-11 in the league?
There's a lot of value to that.
So I think they've got a real chance, which is remarkable that we're even saying that after they started 0-8 in conference play.
Yeah, and I think that to me in and of itself is, yes, they should be on the bubble in that case because they've got the total number of wins, they've got the conference wins, quad 1s, quad 2s, all of that. I don't think the deciding factor, I guess, should come down to, well, they weren't great earlier, but then they got Isaacs back, they got Amac back, and now they're playing well. Mm-hmm. I don't think that should decide whether or not they get in, but I can understand if it's, well, they've been playing like one of the best teams recently, as opposed to just, well, they're healthier, they should be better at that point.
A texter of the Big O Tires text line points out that Kansas State's non-conference was not real sparkling either.
No, it's not.
And it's true. In the Ken Pom non-conference strength of schedule rankings, Kansas State ranks 232nd. Texas Tech is 326.
That's so freaking bad.
And again,
how? You've been such a good team for years. It's not like football where you're scheduling non-conference games 12 years in advance. You have no idea if Oregon State is going to be any good in 2035. Basketball games are scheduled just a year or two in advance.
So they had Ohio State and Georgetown on the schedule, which I mentioned. And obviously Georgetown's wretched. Ohio State's been really bad. They also played Creighton, who has been good. They also played Louisville.
Ew.
They beat Louisville by 32. If you haven't been paying attention to what has happened to Louisville basketball this year, we were talking about this off the air, Brendan. Just, folks, imagine like if Oklahoma football went 2-10 or 1-11. That's what's happening to Louisville basketball this year.
Yeah, it's unthinkable. By the way, one quick note, just while we're talking Big 12 schedules. Did you know Texas Tech's not even the worst non-conference schedule in the Big 12?
I would believe that.
TCU's is worse.
Yeah.
331st. There's only 363 teams. That was a surefire tournament team. How do you not find better opponents?
And then they lost to Northwestern State when they didn't have Mike Miles.
Right. Like, if you had lost that game to a better team, no, it's, whatever. Early non-conference doesn't mean anything. But now you have a terrible loss to go on your ledger as well. It's just doesn't make any sense. And
Texas Tech doesn't have a terrible, they don't have a loss like that. They beat Northwestern State, in fact. But they did lose to Ohio State, who does stink. And that's a 7-point loss that I'm sure Texas Tech would love to have back. That happened out at Maui. So that was... I think that was all Maui, Louisville, Ohio State, and Georgetown. I think it was all Maui.
Yeah.
So, that didn't end up being an awesome field in the Maui this year. Anyhow, the other two teams I want to get to, the team that the metrics love the most is West Virginia.
Yes.
Top 25 team in the Ken Pom basically all year.
All year.
26th, I think, in the net. They're now 5-10 in the league, and their next two games are at Allen Fieldhouse and at Hilton Coliseum, which means you're going 0-2. West Virginia is not walking into either of those buildings and winning. It's not happening. So they might be in a spot where they've got to beat Kansas State in their regular season finale.
Yeah.
To feel good about getting in, even though they have been a metrics darling all season long.
And again, it comes down to resume. And I think things like Ken Pom or what's the one? The Michigan State guy, KPI.
Yeah.
That's the one that the NCAA uses as part of its formula for determining teams. Those have a place. They're extremely important and they have a lot of value. But I think actually winning the games has to have the most value. And I know that winning games in the Big 12 is harder than anywhere else, but I said it earlier when we were talking about the rest of the K-State schedule, the rest of the year. Like West Virginia could look like one of the best teams in the country or could look like a Division II school, a bad Division II school on any given night. They flip-flop so wildly, and that's the downside of having so little consistency over the course of the year. It sucks, but it is what it is.
They don't have any bad non-conference losses. Their non-conference losses were to Purdue and Xavier, both of whom are,
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, pretty good teams. They beat Auburn in the Big 12 SEC Challenge, which is a good win. They crushed Pitt early in the year at Pitt. That was a good win. They've got a win over Florida. So, like, the resume is not bad, but, man, if they end up finishing, like, if they don't beat Kansas State in Morgantown, 5-13 in the league, 16-15 going into the Big 12 tournament, they would be out. I don't care what the metrics say at that point.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
You're not a tournament team. So that is going to be, I think, a must win for them, Kansas State.
Here is a thing that has hurt West Virginia, especially, in general, but the thing that, even though they're quad one losses, they, I think, are just a killer for why West Virginia has not been able to get over the hump this year. Just off the top of your head, without looking at the schedule right away, do you know how many times they've beaten a team in the top 5 of the Big 12 standings this year?
West Virginia?
Yeah. Once.
Did they beat Iowa State?
They beat Iowa State in their first meeting at home.
Of course they did.
Of course they did. That is the only game they have won against a team that is currently in the top 5 of the Big 12 standings. They do not have a win against Kansas. They'll play again coming up on Saturday. No wins against Texas. They don't have a win in their first game against K-State. They did not beat Baylor this year. Their only one was against Iowa State at home.
Yeah, and having to go, like, if they had a little bit of a gentler run-in, you'd feel better. But going to Allen and going to Hilton, good luck. The other team, real quick, Oklahoma State. A lot of people have kind of assumed for a while, they're going to get in, and then they lost 3 straight games, 2 of them on the road, to be fair, but have not looked good. They gave up 100 points to TCU, and then they got run off the floor in Morgantown earlier this week. They've got K-State coming to town Saturday. Then they've got Big Monday against Baylor at home. So 2 really good teams come to town. Baylor, will be looking to get right, and they finish at Texas Tech. I think that, Oklahoma State's kind of in the middle in metrics-wise. They're not as beloved as West Virginia seems to be. They're not down as far as Texas Tech. They've got a couple of wretched non-league losses to Southern Illinois and UCF. They also have, lost to UConn. They lost to Virginia Tech, who's not that good. They did win their Big 12 SEC Challenge game, but that was against Ole Miss, who's wretched. 3 straight losses for Oklahoma State. They feel like they're in desperation mode. I think they've got to get one of these next 2 home games.
Yeah, I agree. Because I think 8-10 gets them in. I do think you're good enough at 8-10 to get a nod. I mean, they might be a play-in team, but I think they will get in at 8-10 for sure. Oh, I don't know which one they're going to get, though. Texas Tech's going to be desperate. That game is in Lubbock to end the year.
Mm-hmm.
K-State right now is playing its best ball in a month. And Baylor, who knows what they're going to look like a week from now or 5 days from now. That's Big Monday next week.
Baylor beat them by 16 in Waco back in January.
Yeah, so that's a tough spot. If they get one of them, no doubt they're in.
Yeah.
If they don't, little iffy.
They might be one of those teams that has to make a run in the Big 12 tournament.
Well, plus that'd be 6 losses in a row to end the year. Then that is when recency bias should make a negative impact on you.
So, bottom line, it's going to be tough to get 9 in for the Big 12. It was fun to dream, but it's going to be tough for them to get 9 in. I still think they end up with 8.
I agree with that. I think 8's the number. 9 would be incredible and would take a lot of chaos in this next 2 weeks. No doubt about that. We've got another commercial break to get to. We've got some best bets coming your way after that here on 580 Sports Talk. few minutes here on 580 Sports Talk. We've got some best bets for you to round things out. But, Dan, one thing I do want to preview. Did you see the news today? It was released by the folks up at Nemaha Central High School of a possible league merger.
I did see this.
We're going to talk about this coming up tomorrow with Rick Peterson from TopSports.news because it does involve a couple of our county teams, Rossville and Silver Lake. But the folks up at Nemaha Central released I think
all of the member schools in question, I think, put this statement out.
Jointly put together. They're the ones who tweeted it, and it got some traction. But essentially said that with the Mid-East League in another year losing a member, Rock Creek is going to move to the NCKL.
NEKL.
No, NCKL.
Oh, NCKL. Did I read that wrong? That's my bad.
No, the NEK.
Nope.
Yeah, I think they're a little too far west for the to be playing Jeff West or Jeff North in those. And then the Big Seven League, they're losing Riverside to, and I don't know what league they're going to after next year. They'll each be down to a slightly smaller number. Apparently, the two leagues are thinking about merging and becoming one super mega Northeast Kansas league, which would be kind of incredible.
It'd be the best small class league in the state, I think, by some distance.
By a lot.
You can already argue that one of the two is, and Big Seven fans will argue for theirs, and the Mid-East League will argue for theirs. But, yeah, you combine those two leagues, and we get, like, Silver Lake Sabetha in the regular season, or we get Nemaha Rossville in the regular season as a league game. Yeah, sign me up, man.
Yeah, that is awesome. That is so cool. So we'll talk about that with Pistol coming up tomorrow. Right now, Dan, before we get to a final word, let's get a couple of quick best bets. By the way, right now at the break in Maryland, the bad dogs are indeed losing. They have been faded, and they're down 15 at the half.
Hey.
UMass Lowell on top.
You know America East ball, man. What can I say?
I do. Another America East game, by the way, is one of mine for today. 6 o'clock tips. So right when we're done here in a few minutes, I got Vermont by a huge number over Binghamton. That's Vermont minus 13.5. You can find that at FanDuel. And then I'm going to go with Tulane plus 15 at Houston. Houston's been surprisingly not dominant at home this year. Good, but not at their best. I'm going to say Tulane covers a big number. Give me the wave.
Okay.
Love Ron Hunter. Love him.
I know the public is hammering this, and you're supposed to fade the public, but Kentucky only laying 2.5 against a Colin Castleton-less Florida Gator team in Gainesville tonight. Like, I don't know what Florida's going to do about Oscar Tshiebwe. I honestly don't know what they're going to do. Are they allowed to use tasers? Because if they're not going to stop Tshiebwe. And I think Kentucky, who has righted the ship after a difficult start, is primed to win that one. Also, must-win mode for North Carolina at a Notre Dame team with nothing to play for. I'll lay the 6.5 with the Tar Heels in South Bend tonight.
Notre Dame is horrible. I watched them play a couple
bad.
of weeks ago. Oh, my God, they are bad. Mike Bray might want to reconsider retiring because, yikes, that program is in the mud. We've got to get to one final break. The final word is next on 580 Sports Talk. Time to wrap up this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk with a quick final word, Dan.
K-State basketball is fun, man, and they have gotten their second wind here down the stretch. All they needed was a little bit of home cooking, back-to-back wins over top 25 teams. K-State has now beaten 7 AP top 25 teams this season. That ties the school record. You have to go back to 2010 to find the team that beat 7 AP top 25 teams, and they got 2 of those in the NCAA tournament on their way to the Elite Eight that year under Frank Martin. K-State's done it in the regular season. Bramlage is a party. This K-State team is fun to watch, and I think they've locked up a top 3 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Final word for me today. I do think the Big 12 is going to get 8 teams into the league, and you can make an argument for getting a 9th in. You can make an argument that, heck, if Oklahoma wins a couple Big 12 tournament games, maybe because they've played such a tough schedule in the league, they should even get a look. But at some point in time, actual win and loss record has got to mean something more than just how many quad 1 or quad 2 games did you play. The wins and losses have to mean something. I think that's what's going to keep the Big 12 from getting a record number of teams this year, but 8 out of 10, still pretty darn good. That does it for 580 Sports Talk today. Coming up on tomorrow's show, Rick Peterson is going to join us for the Invista Credit Union High School Whip Round. We'll also talk to CJ Moore from The Athletic for the Big 12 basketball breakdown. We'll get to that and so much more coming up tomorrow from 3 to 6 on 580 Sports Talk. Don't forget to go check out the podcast version of the show at 580wibw.com. Until tomorrow, for Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. You've been listening to 580 Sports Talk.